Chapter 901. Unfortunately, the boy obviously didn't know how to read the situation. Seeing that Shen Yan was about to leave, he hurriedly stepped forward and stopped him. "Shen Yan, you can't be so petty, right? We're classmates after all. I don't need you to put in a good word for me in front of your sister. Can you help me give this to her?" His hand passed something over. It was a light blue envelope. Shen Yan had received countless such things before. He didn't need to look to know what was written inside. He stared at the boy coldly. "No." The boy's temper flared up. "How dare you, Shen Yan? Fine, I'll pretend that I don't have a classmate like you. I'll find it myself. When I find your house, I'll hand it to her personally." Shen Yan's eyes turned red because of the boy's words. He gritted his teeth and said, "No." The boy also snorted. "You're too nosy. I'm just pursuing your sister. I'm not pursuing you. What can you do about it?" Shen Yan said, "My sister already has someone she likes. You don't have a chance." She had said that she liked him. The boy was stunned. "What? Didn't you say she didn't have a boyfriend?" Shen Yan said coldly, "Did my sister admit it herself?" The boy looked at Shen Yan suspiciously. "You're not lying to me on purpose, are you?" Shen Yan glanced at him. "She has the most important person in her heart and the person she likes the most. My sister told me this herself." "That's right." She had said that Xiao Nian was the person she liked the most and the most important. The boy was speechless. Teenage boys were impulsive when it came to relationships. He had never thought about what he would do if his goddess had a boyfriend. Then. The boy hesitated for a moment before insisting, "Then please help me give this to your sister. It's her business whether she accepts me or not. I have to let her know my heart." Shen Yan couldn't take it anymore. Just as he was about to swing his fist at the boy's face, he suddenly changed his mind. "Okay," he said softly. The boy was immediately overjoyed. He carefully handed the envelope to Shen Yan like it was a treasure. "Please, brother, you must hand it to your sister. I'll treat you to a meal tomorrow." Shen Yan didn't answer. He stuffed the envelope into his bag, turned around, and left. The boy didn't pay much attention to it. Shen Yan was known for being quiet and didn't like to talk much. Shen Yan carried his backpack and took the car home. When he went upstairs, he deliberately took out the blue letter from his bag. Without even looking at it, he slowly tore it into pieces and threw it into the trash can. How could he possibly give such a thing to his sister and let it be an eyesore to her? "Sis." Gu Xingyin turned around and saw the warm smile on Shen Yan's face. "You're back early today." Shen Yan nodded and sat beside Gu Xingyin. "Nothing much today." "Sister," he suddenly called out. Gu Xingyin nodded and waited for him to continue. Unexpectedly, Shen Yan didn't say anything after waiting for a long time. She turned around and saw Shen Yan looking at her with tears in his eyes. Gu Xingyin was shocked. What's wrong with Xiao Nian? Why did he suddenly have such an expression? Shen Yan seemed to be trying his best to control his emotions. He asked, "I'm not related to my sister at all. If she has someone she likes in the future, will I have to move out?" Chapter 902. Gu Xingyin wondered, "Why did you suddenly think of this?" Shen Yan snorted in his heart. "It's because there are too many people coveting you." He lowered his head and did not speak. Gu Xingyin's heart tightened and said, "Did someone gossip in front of you?" Shen Yan still did not speak. Gu Xingyin sighed and said, "Xiao Nian, don't you know how I've been treating you these past few years?" She reached out and wanted to rub his head a few times like before, but found that he had grown too tall. She had to tiptoe to do this. She turned her hand and wanted to pat him on the shoulder, but the big boy in front of her had already lowered his head consciously. Gu Xingyin successfully rubbed Shen Yan's head and said gently, "Don't worry. No matter what happens in the future, I and Xiao Nian will always be a family. This is your home. No one can make you move out." However, Shen Yan's focus was not on this. What he was thinking at this moment was that she did not deny that sentence. She did not say that she would not like anyone in the future. In the future, she would marry, have children, and have her own family. Just thinking about this kind of thing made Shen Yan want to kill someone. Seeing that the child was still keeping his head down and not saying anything, Gu Xingyin secretly wondered if he had not been honest enough just now. But she had clearly said it very clearly. Alas, adolescent children were not easy to deal with. You could never guess what was going on in their little heads. Gu Xingyin thought with some melancholy. Shen Yan suddenly turned around. "I remember that I have something to do. I'll go back to my room first." He left in a hurry. Gu Xingyin, who was sitting on the sofa, was confused. So, what was going on? Shen Yan hurried back to his room and closed the door. He leaned against the door tightly. Upon closer inspection, his face was full of forbearance and even a trace of madness. Yes, madness. He did not dare to stay in front of Gu Xingyin any longer. He was afraid that if he continued to stay here, he wouldn't be able to hold himself back. He couldn't help but want to hold that delicate figure tightly in his arms. He wanted to kiss those lips that always spoke gentle words. He wanted. He closed his eyes and tried his best to expel those thoughts from his mind. He stretched out his hands and made a hugging gesture. It was as if he could deceive himself and pretend that the person was in his arms. After a long while, Shen Yan got up expressionlessly, took off his bathrobe, and went into the bathroom. Turning on the cold water switch, he let the cold water pour down from his head, as if this could extinguish the burning fire in his heart. There wasn't a moment when he didn't want to tell his sister about his feelings. However, he had to carefully hide his thoughts at all times. He couldn't let anyone know, especially her. Because it was very likely that once such thoughts were exposed, what awaited him would be the cruelest judgment. As long as she thought about that pair of eyes that always looked at her with tolerance and gentleness, she might one day feel disgusted and unhappy. Shen Yan felt that it was better to leave it as it was. At least for now, he was still the most important person to her. He could be so close to her every day, be close to her, look at her, and feel her warmth. This was good. He said to himself. Although such torturous days were almost driving him crazy. Chapter 903. The next day after school, Shen Yan was stopped by an unfamiliar girl at the school gate. He frowned at her. Tong Yuanyuan took a closer look at the boy. He was indeed the school hunk. With his handsome appearance and slightly cold temperament, he was indeed the type that attracted girls. Tong Yuanyuan glanced at Shen Yan's eyes. Such a person definitely couldn't be a fool, nor was he someone who was willing to be under others for a long time. Since this was the case, she was more confident in her next plan. Shen Yan was about to walk around her and leave. "Wait, Shen Yan. I have something to talk to you about." Tong Yuanyuan hurriedly stopped him. He was as unapproachable as the rumor said. Shen Yan didn't stop. "I'm not interested in what you have to say." Tong Yuanyuan smiled confidently behind him. "It's about your sister, Ling Su. Aren't you interested?" Shen Yan's footsteps came to an abrupt halt. Shen Yan turned around and stared at Tong Yuanyuan with a sharp gaze. Tong Yuanyuan actually felt a trace of pressure under such a gaze. How was that possible? He was just a 16-year-old high school student. She comforted herself that she was overthinking. "What is it?" Shen Yan asked slowly. Tong Yuanyuan looked around. It was the end of the school day, and there were already students secretly looking at the two of them. "It's not convenient here. How about we find a place to talk?" 15 minutes later. Speak. Shen Yan didn't even put down his school bag. He looked at the girl in front of him indifferently. Tong Yuanyuan's eyes flashed when she saw that he was about to leave at any time. Really? It had been a long time since she met someone who didn't give her face. She slowly stirred the coffee in the cup with a spoon and said leisurely, Shen Yan, I know that you're just adopted by Ling Su, right? Shen Yan's gaze suddenly turned cold as he stared at Tong Yuanyuan. This was the thing he hated the most. This fact always told him that he had nothing to do with his sister. However, this was also one of the things he was most grateful for. After countless midnight dreams, he had to be grateful that he wasn't related to her by blood. However, this didn't mean that he was willing to let others know about this. When Tong Yuanyuan saw Shen Yan's expression, a smile appeared on her face. As expected, he cared so much about this matter. Seeing that Shen Yan had no intention of replying, she didn't mind. Instead, he continued, Shen Yan, look, Ling Su adopted you, but she didn't give you the Ling family's household registration. The Ling family has so much property, but not a single cent will belong to you. Look at how hypocritical that woman is. She adopted you and earned a good reputation, but in reality, all she did was provide a pair of chopsticks and a few coins that were insignificant to her. Shen Yan, are you really willing? Tong Yuanyuan took a sip from the cup in her hand and continued to bewitch him. You've lived in the Ling family for a few years. You should know better than me how rich the Ling family is, right? Did you really not think about such a huge sum of wealth? You're the one who has the best relationship with Ling Su now. If she's really good for you, she should give you more of her assets, right? But from the looks of it now, her kindness to you is only on the surface. Chapter 904. Think about it. Ling Su doesn't have any immediate family in this world. If anything were to happen to her, you would be the most qualified person in the world to inherit her assets. Shen Yan stared fixedly at Tong Yuanyuan. Every word seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. I'm very curious. What kind of deep hatred do you have with my sister? Why are you scheming against her? Also, I used to live a life where I didn't even have enough to eat and wear. My sister adopted me and provided for me to study so that I could live like a human. He said word by word, from the beginning to the end, I, Shen Yan, owed Ling Su. She never owed me anything. The Ling family's assets originally belonged to my sister alone. What right do I have to covet her things? Tong Yuanyuan's face darkened at his words. Could it be that she was mistaken? Was Shen Yan really an obedient and cute little white flower? She looked down and saw Shen Yan's tightly clenched fists. Upon closer inspection, his voice was so righteous, but his eyes weren't angry at all. Pfft. He was just good at pretending. So he wanted to be a bitch and pretend to be a chastity. Tong Yuanyuan's heart calmed down. She let go of her hand that was stirring the coffee, looking as if she had seen through him. There's only the two of us here. Shen Yan, stop pretending. Everyone has desires. It's not shameful. She said patiently, compared to the Ling family's hundreds of millions of assets, think about it. What are other things? I really want to work with you. Sure enough, after hearing her words, Shen Yan's eyes flashed and his expression slowly returned to normal. His expression was a little strange as he slowly stared at Tong Yuanyuan. I'm very curious. What kind of hatred do you have with my sister? Why are you trying so hard to take revenge on her? It was hard to imagine that someone like Ling Su would have enemies. Tong Yuanyuan smiled casually. Perhaps her life is too perfect. It's so perfect that people can't stand it and want to ruthlessly crush it. Such an unreasonable reason. Shen Yan clenched his other hand tightly under the table. He controlled his desire to kill this vicious woman and spoke to her slowly. He was silent for a long time. Tong Yuanyuan wasn't in a hurry. She knew that for most people, this kind of thing required a buffer time. However, she was confident that this boy would not reject her. She had always been confident that in front of the temptation of huge benefits, kinship and morals were all bullshit. Only the benefits that were truly within one's grasp were real. Sure enough, Shen Yan raised his head. His eyes were even a little red from excitement. He seemed to be trying his best to suppress his excitement. "What do you want me to do?" Tong Yuanyuan revealed a confident smile. "No one knows Ling Su's body condition better than you, right? I heard that with her body condition, a small allergy or a mild cold could kill her." She didn't continue, but she looked at Shen Yan suggestively. Shen Yan heard his own cold voice. "You know quite a lot. Have you thought about this carefully?" Tong Yuanyuan replied quickly, "Know yourself and know your enemy. Only then can you win 100 battles. Chapter 905. Shen Yan used all his strength to leave the cafe normally. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself and would strangle that vicious woman to death. With such a conversation, he naturally returned home a little later. Gu Xingyin was a little worried when she saw him. "Why are you back so late today?" Shen Yan shook his head. "I ran into something when I left school." "By the way, sister," he suddenly asked, "do you know Tong Yuanyuan?" Tong Yuanyuan. Gu Xingyin was stunned. How did Xiao Nian know her? She shook her head. "I don't know her." In this world, the only time she had met Tong Yuanyuan was in the animal home. Tong Yuanyuan had run away without even introducing herself. It was normal that she had no impression of her. A person her sister didn't even know wanted her life for such a strange reason. Gu Xingyin was a little wary. "What's the matter with Tong Yuanyuan?" Shen Yan smiled. "Nothing. I just heard someone mention it today. They said that Tong Yuanyuan's temperament is quite similar to yours." Gu Xingyin nodded and didn't say anything. Obviously, she didn't take it to heart. "Then I'll go back and do my homework first." Shen Yan seemed a little anxious and hurried back to his room. Gu Xingyin frowned. The system told her today that Tong Yuanyuan had found Shen Yan after school and the two of them had chatted for a long time. Why was Xiao Nian hiding it from her? Gu Xingyin was a little confused. She was very assured that Shen Yan would never hurt her. But why was he hiding it from her? Shen Yan returned to his room and took out his phone from his pocket. He pressed a button and a clear voice came from the phone. "Think about it. Ling Su doesn't have any immediate family in this world." After listening to it carefully, he edited the recording and put it on a website. The school forum. Because there were many students who browsed the forum, and even some teachers would hold some part-time lectures on the forum. Almost everyone in this school had a forum account. Tong Yuanyuan was considered a well-known figure in the school. Many people knew her, and there were also many who could recognize her voice. The male voice that was talking to her had obviously been edited to a certain extent. There was no way to tell who it was. The conversation between the two involved a mission, so their names had been censored. In short, the only one who was completely exposed was Tong Yuanyuan. This caused an uproar. If it wasn't a prank, Tong Yuanyuan's words meant that she was encouraging him to commit a crime. This was completely different from her usual image to the outside world. Tong Yuanyuan habitually logged into the forum at night and found that she had received countless ads. She clicked on the audio and her face turned green. What a good Shen Yan. Was he trying to get rid of the donkey after it had outlived its usefulness? She sneered. This kind of thing, as long as she didn't admit it, or said that it was a prank, who could jump out to testify that she did it deliberately? She didn't believe that Shen Yan would take the initiative to jump out and say that the other party was him. Immediately, she sent out a long and eloquent article of a few thousand words. She expressed that even she herself was confused. She had no idea what this thing was and it should be a prank. The image that she had built up over the years was still very useful. Many people believed that their goddess wasn't such a person. Shen Yan looked coldly at Tong Yuanyuan, who easily turned the situation around, and sneered. He was waiting for her to retaliate. Chapter 906. The next day, Tong Yuanyuan went to school with a normal expression. Her classmate was a girl who had a good relationship with her. When she saw her, she was a little worried. Yuanyuan, that recording, not only her desk mate, but the other students in the class also pricked up their ears and paid attention to this side. Tong Yuanyuan cursed this group of nosy people in her heart, but on the surface, she smiled and replied in a low voice that everyone could hear. Don't worry. I, Tong Yuanyuan, have always been upright. Things that I haven't done will never become true. Her words were so loud and clear, full of righteousness. Her deskmate breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, I knew it. How could Yuanyuan do such a vicious thing? Tong Yuanyuan returned her a reserved smile. However, her peace did not last long. During the third period of math class, the class teacher appeared at the door of the classroom with a serious expression and interrupted the math teacher's lecture. Tong Yuanyuan, come out first. Tong Yuanyuan's heart skipped a beat, and she had a bad feeling. Could something have happened? Under the curious gaze of the whole class, Tong Yuanyuan stood up calmly and walked to the door of the classroom. The class teacher glanced at her and did not say anything. She led her to the office. The premonition in Tong Yuanyuan's heart grew stronger and stronger. She forced a smile and said to the class teacher, Teacher, I wonder what you're looking for me for. In the eyes of outsiders, she had always been a generous, gentle, and kind girl. The class teacher had always had a good impression of her. But at this time, the class teacher just shook her head. She suddenly stopped and asked, Yuanyuan, tell me, is the recording that was spread on the forum real? What Tong Yuanyuan did not want to hear the most now was about the recording. But since the class teacher asked, she had to answer. She put on an innocent look and seemed a little sad. Teacher, it's all fake. It's true. I definitely did not do such a thing. Someone must be framing me. The class teacher seemed to be relieved when she heard this answer. Just at the door of the office, the class teacher stopped and said to Tong Yuanyuan kindly, I believe you, Yuanyuan. You have always been a good child. However, Tong Yuanyuan did not feel comforted. The class teacher opened the office door. Tong Yuanyuan was shocked when she saw the people inside. Police. The two policemen were obviously waiting for her. Seeing Tong Yuanyuan, one of them said, You must be Tong Yuanyuan. We received a report saying that you were trying to murder someone. Premeditated murder. Such a crime was no small matter. At this moment, Tong Yuanyuan calmed down. She heard her calm voice. I don't know what you're talking about. If it's that recording, I can only say that I don't know anything. The policeman wasn't surprised by her words. He only said, It is indeed that recording. It's just that our police station received the complete version, and the person who reported it was another person involved. What? Tong Yuanyuan could no longer maintain her composure. Was Shen Yan an idiot? Reporting the case myself? Wasn't he afraid that Ling Su would be wary of him from now on? When the policeman saw her facial expression, he already had a rough guess. I'm really sorry. In order to cooperate with the case, we need you to come with us. Chapter 907. Tong Yuanyuan's class teacher said worriedly, Tong Yuanyuan is our classmate. The police officer smiled. Don't worry, we've already contacted her parents. He then asked Tong Yuanyuan to call her parents in front of the class teacher. The class teacher was relieved when she heard Tong Yuanyuan's aunt's voice. Tong Yuanyuan was no longer as calm as before. She really didn't expect Shen Yan to dare. Everything was within Shen Yan's expectations. In front of ironclad evidence, Tong Yuanyuan couldn't argue no matter how much she wanted to. Usually, when no harm was caused, Tong Yuanyuan's treatment was mainly based on the attitude of the victim. The police were about to contact Gu Xingyin, but Shen Yan rejected their request. My sister's health is very poor. I can provide the hospital proof. This kind of thing is too traumatic for her. I don't want this to affect her negatively. Shen Yan said straightforwardly, I've already contacted someone yesterday. He's my sister's guardian and can make the decision on her behalf. When he called the police yesterday, he had already called GC. Shen Yan actually didn't like GC. He couldn't tell the reason. It was probably a subtle jealousy. Before he had the ability to protect anyone, this man had always taken on the role of protecting his sister. To his elder sister, he was no ordinary person. However, even though he didn't like him, Shen Yan knew very well that under such circumstances, as a minor, he couldn't help his sister much. Therefore, he looked for GC. GC had bought the earliest flight after receiving the news. No matter what the situation was, he couldn't ignore such a matter. You want us to forgive you? GC was still wearing a tight-fitting black suit. Not a single strand of hair was out of place. This man, no matter when, no matter how hurried he was, would always show his strongest and most perfect side. Tong Yuanyuan felt a little breathless. This man's aura was too terrifying. But, she gritted her teeth. If she didn't fight for it, it would really be over. When his uncle and auntie found out about this, they were probably hoping that his sentence would be more severe so that they would have enough time to embezzle all the assets that his parents had left for him. With tears in her eyes, she looked pitiful and regretful. I really know I was wrong. Actually, I'm not close to Lingsu. At that time, I was just blinded. I was just joking with Shen Yan most of the time. GC sat quietly to the side. He didn't react at all to her words. Tong Yuanyuan could only continue, can you forgive me? She bit her lips and suddenly took a step forward. With a hoarse voice, she said, as long as you're willing to let me go, I am willing to do anything. The last sentence was incomparably ambiguous and seductive. GC finally showed some reaction. He raised his head and scanned Tong Yuanyuan from head to toe with his sharp eyes. I've been sitting here for a total of 8 minutes and 23 seconds. During this time, you said you were wrong 3 times, but from beginning to end, I haven't heard a single word of apology from you to Su Su. Then, Miss Tong Yuanyuan, are you apologizing just for me? Chapter 908. His tone was very steady and there was no hint of mockery in it. However, in Tong Yuanyuan's ears, it sounded inexplicably mocking. GC wasn't done speaking. Miss Tong Yuanyuan, you're an adult. I believe you have enough self-control and thinking ability. You can be responsible for any decision you make under normal circumstances. This matter itself doesn't need any leeway to reverse the situation. GC stood up and paused as he was about to leave. Oh right, there's one more thing. He glanced at Tong Yuanyuan and said, a girl's body is very precious. I hope you can cherish it. The door was gently closed. Tong Yuanyuan squatted on the ground weakly. A huge sense of shame spread from the bottom of her heart. At this moment, she didn't want to see anyone. However, someone quickly came in. Her aunt had thick makeup on her face. When she saw her, she started to scold her sarcastically. Let me see, my Miss Tong is really gentle and kind. She can even kill someone without hesitation. She looked at Tong Yuanyuan as if she had seen something dirty. Oh my God, if others know that we raised you, who knows how they'll point fingers at us behind our backs. Fortunately, our Jiayuan went overseas. Otherwise, she might have been implicated by you. Tong Yuanyuan's uncle couldn't seem to listen anymore. He tugged at his wife's hand. Her aunt shook him off impatiently and scolded even louder. What's wrong? What did I say wrong? She's the one who's shameless and vicious. Guardian of a murderer, is this a good name? I feel ashamed for her. She'll be too embarrassed to go out next month. If you ask me, such a person living in this world. Her words became more and more unpleasant. Tong Yuanyuan listened to the shrew-like scolding and suddenly thought of the man who had just left. They were like people from two different worlds. She thought again. Why was there such a big difference between her life and Lingsu's? If at that time, her guardian had been like that man, would she not have to live so tirelessly? Who didn't want to live a carefree life without any worries? GC walked out of the room and talked to the police for a while. Shen Yan sat outside and waited until he saw GC walk out. He hurriedly went up to him and asked, "Is everything settled?" GC glanced at him and nodded. "No problem." Shen Yan exhaled and asked uncertainly, "They won't disturb sister, right?" GC opened the car door and got in. After Shen Yan got in, he started the car. "It won't affect Susu," GC replied. The two of them fell into silence. Speaking of which, Shen Yan and GC were basically strangers. To GC, the only person he was responsible for was Ling Su. As for Shen Yan, he was brought home by Ling Su. Naturally, everything was arranged by her. "You're not bad," GC suddenly said. These words came out of nowhere, but Shen Yan understood the meaning behind them. He snorted awkwardly. "I don't need you to judge whether I'm good or not." The corners of GC's cold lips curled up in a faint arc. Su had a good eye. This boy was someone who knew how to be grateful and had a righteous heart. If that was the case, he would feel more at ease. Chapter 909. Gu Xingyin was surprised to see the person who came back with Shen Yan. "Cousin, why are you back? Why didn't you call in advance?" She was still very happy. Although her relationship with GC wasn't particularly close, in Ling Su's heart, GC had always been a pillar of support. GC was Ling Su's teacher and father. She respected him more than she was close to him. Facing Gu Xingyin, GC's expression softened. "I had something to do here at the last minute. I happened to meet Shen Yan on the way, so I came back with him." Gu Xingyin nodded and didn't ask any more questions. GC had come back at the last minute for this matter. He still had a lot of things to deal with, so he would only stay for one night. His room in the Ling family residence had always been tidied up, so he could move in directly. It was very convenient. That night, GC and Gu Xingyin chatted for a while. Actually, it was mostly Gu Xingyin talking. GC would occasionally ask a few questions, but the atmosphere between the two of them was very good. Shen Yan sat at the side and ate fruit sourly, but he didn't know who to vent his jealousy on. Finally, it was time for Gu Xingyin to rest. GC had to wake up early tomorrow to catch a plane and was preparing to go upstairs to rest. The two of them ended their conversation. Shen Yan sneaked into his sister's room. "What's wrong, Xiao Nian?" Shen Yan was speechless. Actually, he was fine. It was just that when he saw the interaction between the two of them, he felt a little jealous. Actually, he knew in his heart that there was no special relationship between his sister and GC. If there was, it was just kinship. But he just couldn't bear it. Seeing his sister close to someone else, no matter what kind of creature the other party was, he would feel jealous. He wished that he was the only creature within 3 meters of his sister. He thought for a moment and finally found an excuse for himself. "I haven't said good night to sister yet," he said calmly and walked forward to give Gu Xingyin a hug before she went to bed. Gu Xingyin, adolescent boys were indeed hard to understand. The next day, when Shen Yan went out, he didn't see GC. He had indeed gone to the airport early. He finished his breakfast in a good mood. When he heard that Tong Yuanyuan didn't come to class, he was in a better mood. Tong Yuanyuan's sentence came quickly. She was imprisoned for 2 years. The school's explanation was that she had been suspended from school due to a sudden illness. However, based on the recording on the forum and Tong Yuanyuan's energetic appearance yesterday, anyone could tell that this was just an excuse. Shen Yan and GEC both hid this matter from Gu Xingyin. It would be best not to disturb her if he could not disturb her. This was the consensus between the two men. However, they did not know that Gu Xingyin already knew about this matter. Are you afraid that I'm thinking too much? Gu Xingyin looked at the information sent by the system and laughed. The two of them had actually managed to deal with the greatest threat to him in this world by joining forces. She hadn't even made a move. Gu Xingyin stretched lazily and opened the curtains. The soft sunlight accompanied by the cool morning breeze brushed past her cheeks. Outside the window, the newly bloomed roses trembled slightly with the morning dew. A little further away, she could see the scene of an old man taking his grandson for a walk outside. Her mood was as good as this scene. Chapter 9-10. Another 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. In the past 2 years, Gu Xingyin's health had improved. Shen Yan kept a close eye on her and made her rest, take medicine, and exercise every day. Although she was still a little thin and pale compared to the average person, she no longer looked like she would collapse from a gust of wind. At this moment, she was sitting in a Western restaurant with Qin Chuan. I want to ask you a favor. Qin Chuan was obviously a little embarrassed. Miao Miao is on good terms with you. Can you help me ask what kind of gift she likes? Gu Xingyin couldn't help but laugh. At that time, she didn't expect Qin Chuan and Su Miao Miao to be together. Su Miao Miao's personality was very good. After that, the two of them met several times at the Animal House and added each other as friends. Later on, they developed into good friends. Qin Chuan also went to the Animal House diligently, but his goal had changed. In the past, it was obvious who it was for. Later on, it became Su Miao Miao. When Shen Yan and his classmates went out to play, someone tugged at him. Shen Yan, look, is that your sister? The people in Shen Yan's class had a deep impression of Gu Xingyin. After all, with her looks and aura, it was really difficult to forget after seeing her once. Shen Yan looked over from afar. Wasn't that Gu Xingyin by the window? She was sitting opposite a man. From the expression on her face, she seemed to be very happy. And the man opposite her, Shen Yan narrowed his eyes. He remembered him, Qin Chuan, the man who had harbored ill intentions towards his sister a long time ago. His friend was still sighing. Is that your sister and her boyfriend? He's quite handsome. Shen Yan turned around and said to him, that's not my sister's boyfriend. He's just an ordinary friend. I suddenly remembered that I still have something to do, so I'll go home first. Without waiting for a reply, he strode away. That person looked at him in confusion, muttered a few words, and left. Shen Yan didn't go very far. He found a more secluded place where he could see his sister, but the other party couldn't see him. Then he dialed a number. Gu Xingyin picked up her phone and saw that it was Shen Yan. She picked it up. Little Nian, what's wrong? Shen Yan tried her best to sound normal. Sister, school is over. Can you accompany me to buy something? Buying things at this time? Gu Xingyin glanced at the time and said, I'm afraid I can't do it today. I'm with a friend outside now. I'll accompany you tomorrow, okay? Shen Yan tightened his grip on the phone and said slowly, friend? What friend? Do I know him? Gu Xingyin didn't notice anything wrong with his tone and replied, just an ordinary friend. You don't know him. She was about to say that it was Qin Chuan, but when she thought about how Xiao Nian and Qin Chuan had been unhappy back then, she didn't want to tell him and affect his mood. Shen Yan said calmly, "All right then, I'll wait for you tomorrow." He hung up the phone but did not leave. He stood there quietly and watched the two of them interact in a good atmosphere until Gu Xingyin stood up first. Aya. Gu Xingyin felt dizzy and was about to fall to the side. Qin Chuan quickly supported her. "Are you okay?" Gu Xingyin shook her head and smiled embarrassedly. "I might have sat for too long. My blood isn't flowing properly." In Shen Yan's eyes, the two of them were hugging each other intimately. Chapter 9:11. His hand grabbed the railing beside him tightly. He didn't even realize that his fingernails were being squeezed so hard that they were congested. He watched the two of them leave with bloodshot eyes. Qin Chuan even opened the car door for his sister. The two of them got into the car and left. "Actually, you don't have to be so polite. I can ask the driver to pick me up," Gu Xingyin said. Qin Chuan shook his head. "If Miao Miao finds out that I left you behind and went home alone, she will definitely nag me for an hour." Not to mention Miao Miao, even he himself was worried about letting Gu Xingyin go home alone. When Gu Xingyin returned home, she was told that Shen Yan had not returned home yet. She called Shen Yan. At this moment, Shen Yan was wandering aimlessly on the road. He didn't want to go home at all. He didn't know what he was trying to escape from. When he received Gu Xingyin's call, his eyes lit up. However, when he thought that she might have just gotten out of Qin Chuan's car, his mood darkened again. "Xiao Nian, why aren't you home yet?" The voice on the phone was still as gentle as ever. Shen Nian thought that not long ago, she had also been so gentle with another man. He tried his best to make his voice sound normal. "I'm out with a few classmates today. I'll be back a little late." Gu Xingyin didn't suspect anything. It was normal for boys to go out and play. She was worried that Shen Yan was too homesick. She asked if he was going home for dinner. After getting a negative answer, Gu Xingyin was very considerate to let him have fun. Shen Yan walked slowly on the street until he was blocked by a few people with dyed yellow hair. "We've been a little tight on money recently. Little brother, do you think you can help us out a little?" The leader of the hooligans sized up Shen Yan. His long time on the streets had created a pair of good eyesight. One look at the boy's clothes and he knew that he would be a fat sheep. "Help?" Shen Yan's lips curled into a strange smile. "What a coincidence. I've been in a bad mood recently. Let me relax a little. I'll help you out a little, okay?" He carefully placed his school bag on the ground. "Motherfucker, this brat is crazy." Blondie spat out the cigarette butt in his mouth onto the ground. "Brothers, let's teach this rude little brother some manners." 15 minutes later. Shen Yan bent down and picked up the bag on the ground. He even carefully patted the dust off it. His sister had bought it for him. It would be a pity if it got dirty. In front of him, little yellow feather was lying messily on the ground. He slowly walked up to Blondie and stepped on his wrist. The blonde's face instantly turned pale, and he almost cried out, "Brother, brother. I was wrong. Please be gentle with your feet. I was blind as a bat. I don't know the rules." Shen Yan exerted some force on little yellow hair's foot, and little yellow hair instantly began to cry. "No, no, no. We didn't know the rules. We didn't know the rules. We will compensate, compensate." Shen Yan's foot did not loosen. "You don't have to compensate me. We've made a deal. If you let me relax, I'll take care of you." He exerted some force on his foot, and the sound of bones cracking could be heard. Little yellow hair let out a shrill howl. At the same time, a thick stack of money was thrown at him. Little yellow hair broke out in a cold sweat as he looked at the departing figure as if he was looking at a demon. Chapter 9:12. When Shen Yan returned home, he saw a figure sitting in the living room. He subconsciously glanced at the clock on the wall. It was already 10:30 a.m. Why wasn't she asleep at this time? For a moment, he couldn't remember anything else. Shen Yan walked quickly to Gu Xingyin. "Sister, why aren't you asleep yet?" Gu Xingyin was half lying on the sofa, drowsy. She wasn't used to staying up late after a long period of time. Hearing Shen Yan's words, she forced her eyes open. "I'm waiting for you to come home." However, the moment she saw Shen Yan, her drowsiness disappeared. There were bruises on his face, and even his lips were broken. She sat up immediately. "Did you get into a fight?" Shen Yan was stunned. Then, he realized that she had seen the wound on his face. Then, his memories came back to him, and he remembered why he was unhappy. He turned his head awkwardly and said, "I met a few hooligans on the way. They wanted to extort me, so I fought with them." Gu Xingyin glared at him angrily. "If they want money, just give it to them. What if they brought a knife? There's no need to put yourself in danger for a few dollars." Shen Yan didn't speak. Gu Xingyin was completely awake. She got up and said to Shen Yan, "Go take a shower. I'll apply medicine for you after that." Shen Yan obediently went back to his room to take a shower. When he returned to his room, he realized that his gloomy mood had improved a lot. The anger and resentment in his heart had already calmed down when he saw his sister waiting for him on the sofa until midnight. It was always like this. His emotions were all easily controlled by her. Every word and action was heaven and hell. After taking a shower, Shen Yan went downstairs in his pajamas. Gu Xingyin was waiting there with the medical kit. Shen Yan couldn't help but say, "Sister, I can do it myself. Go to sleep first. Otherwise, you'll have a headache tomorrow morning." Shen Yan was even more concerned about her health than Gu Xingyin herself. Gu Xingyin rolled her eyes at him. "Don't talk. Can you heal the wounds on your body by yourself?" She wasn't really a young lady who never left the house. Since Shen Yan's face had become like that, there must be more injuries on his body. "Take off your clothes," she urged him. Shen Yan's body stiffened. This sentence was too easy to let one's imagination run wild. What's more, the person who said this was the person she wanted to embrace day and night. Seeing that Shen Yan didn't move for a long time, Gu Xingyin became anxious. Her thoughts were completely different from Shen Yan's. She thought that Shen Yan's injuries were too serious and he didn't dare to show her. "What's wrong? Hurry up, aren't you afraid of disturbing my sleep? The sooner I finish, the sooner I can rest." Shen Yan came back to his senses and took off his pajamas without another word. The 16-year-old youth had a well-proportioned bone structure. His body was covered with a thin layer of muscle due to long-term training. The lines were smooth and beautiful. They were not overly exaggerated, but they did not make people overlook the strength contained in them. Shen Yan thought nervously, "I wonder if sister will like it." However, it turned out that he was thinking too much. Gu Xingyin didn't pay attention to his figure at all. She didn't notice if he had chest muscles or abdominal muscles. Her attention was all attracted by the bruises on his fair skin. Chapter 9:13. Gu Xingyin looked at these scars and felt both angry and distressed. She pressed her fingers hard and was satisfied to hear Shen Yan gasp in pain. Gu Xingyin snorted. "Now you know it's painful. Do you think you're especially brave when you're fighting?" She was really angry. From the day she adopted Shen Yan, she had secretly sworn in her heart that she would never let him suffer again in this life. Now that she had finally raised him to be fair, fat, and healthy, he didn't cherish himself and went to fight with hooligans. Gu Xingyin did not hold back at all as he applied the ointment. When he came across the bruises, he deliberately rubbed them hard. "It's good that you know it's painful. Let's see if you'll still be a hero next time. Shen Yan felt pain and joy. Although the wounds on his body hurt, he missed the touch of his sister's cold hands on his skin even more. He could clearly feel the temperature of her fingers at such a close distance. This kind of feeling was really fascinating. Shen Yan thought to himself that it would be better if she applied the medicine a little slower. Unfortunately, although Gu Xingyin was angry, her movements were not slow. Soon, she stopped and let Shen Yan put on his clothes. Then, she applied the medicine on his face. The two of them were very close. As long as Shen Yan lowered his eyes, he could clearly see all the expressions on Gu Xingyin's face. Her long eyelashes trembled slightly, and a small shadow fell on her lower eyelids like a butterfly flapping its wings. Her lips, which were usually pale, were slightly pouted, as if waiting for someone to taste them. Shen Yan originally enjoyed this feeling, but soon, he felt that this might not be a good thing. The other party was too close. Even her breathing was close. The other party's aura surrounded him. Shen Yan only felt a small flame rising from the inside of his body. The small flame burned brighter and brighter, causing his face to turn red, his breathing to become heavy, and his eyes to darken. At this distance, Shen Yan only needed to raise his hand to easily pull Gu Xingyin into his arms. He stared at her without blinking, as if he wanted to engrave this familiar face deep in his heart. Gu Xingyin was completely unaware of this. She was wholeheartedly applying medicine for the other party. Done. Gu Xingyin breathed a sigh of relief. She was finally done. At the same time, she felt a strong force on her waist and she fell into Shen Yan's arms. Shen Yan heaved a sigh of relief. It felt so good to hug her. He really couldn't hold back just now. Gu Xingyin felt that there was something wrong with this development. Nian. She called out hesitantly. Shen Yan really wanted to take this opportunity to confess to her directly. He told her of his desire for her, told her that he wanted to hold her, kiss her, possess her, and even do more intimate things. But he didn't dare. Thus, Shen Yan only rubbed her neck and said sullenly, "Sister, when you get married in the future, what will I do?" Was he, acting coquettishly? Gu Xingyin came back to her senses and accepted the fact that this boy, who was a head taller than her, was acting coquettishly. How could she get married? No, it should be said, how could she marry someone else? Gu Xingyin deliberated over her words and replied, "What are you thinking about? Sister and Nian will always be together." Although he knew that she was comforting him, Shen Yan still jumped for joy. He smiled happily like a child who didn't know anything about the world. "Yes, sister and I will always be together." Chapter 9:14. From that day onwards, Gu Xingyin inexplicably felt that her little brother had become even more clingy to her. Not to mention school time, after school or on rest days, he would definitely follow her closely. He did not relax at all. What's going on? Gu Xingyin tried to flip through some books. With the college entrance examination approaching, the examinees were nervous and might often do things that were very different from usual. Gu Xingyin rubbed her chin. Is Xiao Nian too nervous? That day, she specially pulled Shen Yan aside for a heart-to-heart talk. Xiao Nian, I realize that something's wrong with you recently. Are you relying on me too much? Shen Yan was originally a little nervous. He thought that his crush had been discovered. In the end, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he realized that his sister had thought of something completely unrelated. Why would she think that he was nervous because of the college entrance examination? However, it was good for her to misunderstand. This way, he would have enough reason to stay by her side, right? Thus, the two of them had a harmonious conversation with different moods. Both of them felt that they had gained a lot. Shen Yan's mood improved for almost half a month, until that day. The college entrance examination was in half a month. Coincidentally, his sister's birthday was not long after the college entrance examination. He was shopping at the mall, wanting to prepare a birthday present for his sister. Then, he saw, his sister was shopping at a jewelry store with Qin Chuan. A woman and a man went to a jewelry store. What kind of relationship did they have to be in order to do this? Shen Yan felt that he couldn't even breathe properly. These beautiful days were like a perfect and fragile dream. Everything was just him deceiving himself. They would always be together. One day, she would have someone else she liked. She would get married and have another man to spend the rest of her life with. At the thought of this possibility, Shen Yan felt a beast stirring in his heart. It was tempting him and mocking him. Look, you're standing still. In the end, she has someone else by her side. In her heart, you will always be a younger brother who won't grow up. You'll never have a chance. His eyes reddened bit by bit. At the same time, in another environment. You must not tell Miao Miao. Qin Chuan was a little nervous. Gu Xingyin, who was pulled in as an advisor and a test subject, nodded. Don't worry. I won't tell her. She thought about it and said with a smile, Miao Miao will be overjoyed to receive this gift. Hearing this, Qin Chuan also smiled. In Shen Yan's eyes, the two of them were laughing and chatting. From time to time, they would compare the items in their hands. The two of them shopped in the shop for nearly an hour, while Shen Yan watched from outside for an hour. Until the two of them left. Shen Yan immediately walked into the shop and looked at the place where the two of them had stopped. With one look, he felt as if his heart had been frozen by ice. They were all rings. Shen Yan suddenly felt like crying. Not long ago, she had hugged him and said that the two of them would always be together, but in the blink of an eye, she had followed another man to choose a ring. Sir, sir. The staff at the counter looked worriedly at the dispirited boy. The other party was young, but the clothes and watches on him were all branded. She didn't dare to be disrespectful. But, from the looks of it, was he heartbroken? Shen Yan came back to his senses. He wanted to smile, but he realized that he couldn't. Chapter 9:15. When Shen Yan returned home, for the first time, he ignored Gu Xingyin on the sofa and went straight to his room. Soon, there was a knock on his door. Shen Yan knew who it was, but he didn't say anything. Xiao Nian. It was a familiar voice. But Shen Yan didn't want to see her now. He was afraid that he would do something irreversible on impulse. Sister, I'm not feeling well today. I don't want to eat dinner. I want to sleep early, he said sullenly. There was silence outside the door, and then there was the sound of footsteps leaving. Shen Yan exhaled. The next day was a rest day. Shen Yan didn't get out of bed in the morning. He let himself lie quietly in bed for a long time. It wasn't until noon that he made a decision. Sister. After breakfast, the two of them sat on the sofa. Gu Xingyin glanced at him. Are you feeling better now? Shen Yan nodded. Sister, after the college entrance examination, can I ask you for a gift? When he said this, he deliberately glanced at Gu Xingyin's hand. Fortunately, he didn't see a ring. Gu Xingyin smiled. Sure, just tell me what you want. Shen Yan smiled. I'll tell you when the time comes. Then, he said casually, oh right, I saw someone on the street yesterday. It's Qin Chuan. Sister, do you remember him? Qin Chuan. Gu Xingyin didn't expect Shen Yan to still remember him after so long. She nodded. Qin Chuan and I are friends. We even went out for a meal yesterday. Not only did they have a meal, but they also looked at the ring together. Shen Yan kept these words in his heart and didn't say it out loud. I remember that Qin Chuan seems to like you. Sister, are you two now? Shen Yan tried his best to show a teasing expression. No one knew how high his heart was. Gu Xingyin had a strange expression. She glared at Shen Yan. What are you thinking about? This child was about to take the college entrance examination, but he was still thinking about such things. However, Shen Yan misunderstood her words to mean something else. He thought that her unfinished words were because she was shy. Shen Yan lowered his eyes to hide the coldness in them. He suddenly hugged Gu Xingyin's arm. Sister, you must remember the gift you promised me. Gu Xingyin looked at Shen Yan inexplicably. When have I ever gone back on my words in front of you? Don't worry, I don't care what you want. As long as I can give it to you, I will definitely give it to you, okay? She had read the books. For the students who were about to take the college entrance examination, she had to try her best to satisfy their requirements. Therefore, Gu Xingyin easily sold herself out. Shen Yan smiled mysteriously. Okay, I'll remember it. Now that the words had been spoken, there was no chance for him to go back on his words. Half a month later. Shen Yan walked out of the examination hall and saw a familiar car. He walked over in a few steps and, as expected, saw someone in the car. Shen Yan frowned. It's so hot outside. Why did you come out? If I get a heatstroke, I'll feel terrible for a long time. Gu Xingyin handed him a bottle of water. I'm sitting in the car. Don't worry. Come up, let's eat first. After dinner, Shen Yan returned to school. In the next 2 days, there were gatherings, celebrations, and a thank you banquet. 3 years of tears and youth came to an end here. Many people cried and laughed. Shen Yan wasn't one of them. To him, there was something more important waiting for him. It was time to fulfill the promise that someone had made. Chapter 9:16. Gu Xingyin was in a daze. She felt like she had fallen into a grotesque dream. There was a sweet aroma in the air, making her sleepy head even more groggy. Then there was the familiar lotus fragrance in her soul. Lotus fragrance. Wait. Gu Xingyin's mind cleared. She opened her eyes with difficulty. It was very dark around her. It should be dark. Xiao Nian. The familiar smell told her that there was someone beside her. Shen Yan seemed a little surprised. Sister, you're awake. Gu Xingyin wanted to get up and turn on the lights, but she found that her hands couldn't move. She was tied to the head of the bed. Gu Xingyin was speechless. She said calmly, Xiao Nian, can you explain what's going on? Shen Yan smiled softly. I remember that you promised me that you would give me a gift after the college entrance examination. Perhaps because his tone was a little subtle, Gu Xingyin immediately thought of something unspeakable. She asked the system uncertainly, I don't think there's anything wrong with me raising a child. System. At this time, as a qualified system, it felt that it needed to remain silent. Gu Xingyin, who hadn't received an answer from the system, was speechless. She felt that her body was a little hot. This kind of heat was a little different from usual. It was fine and dense, as if it was spreading from the most secret part of her body. Little by little, it burned her rationality until it was chaotic, and there was no way to avoid it. She didn't think of anything else until she heard her own panting. Gu Xingyin felt a little empty in her heart. She couldn't believe it. Xiao Nian, you actually drugged me. Shen Yan had been sitting in the darkness for a long time, so he could clearly see Gu Xingyin's expression. He only took a glance before standing up and covering Gu Xingyin's eyes. Shen Yan knew that after he did something, many things might be irreparable. But he still didn't dare to look into Gu Xingyin's eyes. He was afraid that the other party's clear and gentle eyes would reveal a look of disgust and disappointment when she looked at him. Sister, he said softly. This is just a little toy to liven things up. I carefully selected it for a long time. It definitely won't have any adverse effects on your body. A familiar aura surrounded his body. Gu Xingyin opened her mouth again. She felt that she needed to talk to Shen Yan. But Shen Yan didn't give her the chance. He immediately covered Gu Xingyin's mouth. After a long and lingering kiss, what made Gu Xingyin the most helpless was that under the effect of the drug, her body actually took the initiative to respond to Shen Yan. She didn't reject such intimacy, but she felt that she should make things clear with Shen Yan. If Shen Yan did this, it was very easy for something to happen. If it were anyone else, they would be angry or even feel humiliated by such inexplicable treatment. However, Shen Yan seemed to know what she was thinking and didn't give her a chance to speak at all. "Sister, I know that you must hate me to the core now. Don't speak. At least, don't speak now. Let me deceive myself, okay?" Gu Xingyin's mouth was blocked by something. She couldn't speak, but she didn't feel uncomfortable. She felt Shen Yan's face buried in her neck, and something warm slid down her skin. It was tears. Chapter 9:17. Gu Xingyin was so angry that she was amused. "What do you mean by this?" she asked coldly. Shen Yan looked up at her. "I know what I did is unforgivable. Sister, you can punish me however you want." Gu Xingyin sneered. "If I punish you, will what you did offset it?" Shen Yan stared at her without blinking. "If I could go back in time, I would still do the same." There was no hesitation in his words. "I can't stand sister being with another man. If that's the case, I can't guarantee that I won't do something irreparable." Gu Xingyin really wanted to imitate those unreasonable girls on TV and casually throw the things in his hands at this abominable guy. However, neither her personality nor her upbringing allowed her to do such a thing. Gu Xingyin felt that Shen Yan's actions were simply stupid. If it were anyone else, even if they had him in their heart would probably turn cold after encountering such a thing. She wanted to properly teach him how to conduct himself in the right way. Hence, she laughed, but there was no warmth in her laughter. "Shen Yan." Shen Yan heard her sister call him by his full name. She rarely acted like this, which meant that she was really angry this time. However, this wasn't what made Shen Yan panic the most. Instead, it was Gu Xingyin's tone that was too calm. Shen Yan would rather her sister scold her or slap her twice like just now. It would be better than talking to her in such calm words. It was as if he was just an insignificant person to her. Gu Xingyin's tone was very calm, and even her thoughts were very clear. "Qin Chuan and I are just ordinary friends. He has a girlfriend, Su Miao. You've met her before." Shen Yan suddenly raised his head. Gu Xingyin ignored him and continued, "He asked me to look at the ring because he plans to propose to Su Miao on her birthday. He wants me to give him a reference." Shen Yan's heart seemed to be experiencing endless suffering. Her sister had nothing to do with Qin Chuan. She didn't like anyone else, and she wouldn't be with him. But because of that groundless jealousy, he did a stupid thing. This was nothing. What he said next shocked Shen Yan the most. Gu Xingyin looked at him quietly. "Do you really like me? If you really like me, then have you ever truly felt my heart? Have you noticed that it is also beating for you?" Shen Yan. What? Shen Yan felt that he must be hallucinating. Her words just now meant that his elder sister liked him too, right? Gu Xingyin seemed to have let go of something. She blurted out everything in her heart. Shen Yan listened to those words that could be considered a confession, but he didn't feel happy at all. If he had known all of this a day ago, he would probably have gone crazy with joy. But it just had to be after he had done such an unforgivable thing out of jealousy. At this time, what was his elder sister trying to do by telling him all this? Shen Yan had a bad feeling about this. His premonition was not wrong. Gu Xingyin smiled coldly. "Shen Yan, you're very good. You're already an adult. I don't want to see you again. Chapter 9:18. Now, get the hell out of here. Gu Xingyin turned around after saying that. She didn't want to see her at all. Unexpectedly, the next moment, her body sank. Her entire body was hugged by someone. Shen Yan, who had been kneeling by the bed just now, had already climbed onto the bed. Gu Xingyin struggled but couldn't break free. Let go, she said angrily. Shen Yan said innocently, I won't let go. Gu Xingyin was speechless. Shen Yan, don't make me hate you. Shen Yan thought that whoever let go at this time would be a fool. Ever since he heard Gu Xingyin admit that she liked him, Shen Yan had been kneeling there thinking of a solution. He had already guessed all the possible reactions Gu Xingyin might have. After thinking about it, the best solution was to be shameless. No matter how his sister reacted, he just needed to pester her to the end. He wouldn't fight back or scold her, but it was impossible for him to leave. His sister was really angry now. There was already such a conflict between the two of them. If he really listened to her and left, he was afraid that there would really be a gap between the two of them. He might as well pester her and say, I did make a mistake, but I admit it. He had a lifetime to admit and correct his mistake. Shen Yan hugged Gu Xingyin tightly and said, I know I'm a jerk and did something wrong. Sister, don't chase me away. I'm willing to be your slave. Let me atone for my sins, okay? Gu Xingyin didn't expect that she had really misjudged him this time. In her eyes, Shen Yan had always been a quiet and elegant boy. However, in just a day and night, she saw two completely different sides of him. She had never seen such a black-bellied bigotry at night, and this hooligan during the day was even more eye-opening. In the end, Shen Yan successfully stayed at home. Gu Xingyin had only said that on purpose. She just didn't expect Shen Yan's reaction to be like this. After Mrs. Chang came back, she noticed that something was wrong between the two of them. Gu Xingyin used to care so much about Shen Yan. She would call him every time she saw him. But now, the two of them ate at the same table, but she didn't even look at him. On the other hand, Shen Yan was still the same as before. He relied on his sister and would even put food in her bowl. However, Gu Xingyin would always frown and ignore him. Mrs. Chang couldn't stand it anymore. She asked Gu Xingyin in private, but how could Gu Xingyin tell her the real reason? He was just finding an excuse to brush her off. On the other hand, Shen Yan specially went to tell Mrs. Chang that she had done something wrong. Her sister was still angry. As for what he had done wrong, he naturally couldn't say it out loud. For the entire summer vacation, for a few months, Shen Yan stayed by Gu Xingyin's side. Even if she rolled her eyes and gave him the cold shoulder every day, he didn't care at all. Compared to the torment after seeing her and Qin Chuan choose a ring, being close to his sweetheart every day was simply heaven. Gu Xingyin originally wanted to give him the cold shoulder and watch him suffer for a period of time, so that he could suffer a little. She didn't expect this kid to be unaffected at all. Every day, he only cared about looking at her affectionately. When the two of them were together, he couldn't wait to confess to her every day. He looked like he was infinitely satisfied as long as he was by her side. Not only did she not see him sad, but he also looked refreshed and energetic every day. Gu Xingyin was worn out. Counting the days, she felt that it was about time. If this continued, it would be meaningless for the two of them to waste time. Chapter 9:19. That morning, the two of them sat on the sofa and watched TV as usual. The living room was very quiet. Only the voices of the actors on the TV could be heard clearly. Around 10 o'clock, Shen Yan got up. After that, he came out with a plate of washed and cut fruits. Shen Yan's treatment these days told him that she wouldn't respond if he handed it over. Although Gu Xingyin no longer asked him to leave, she also ignored him. It was more like she ignored his existence. Shen Yan was already prepared. He knew that she was angry. It didn't matter. He had an entire life to wait for her to forgive him. Shen Yan habitually handed the fruit plate in his hand to Gu Xingyin on the coffee table. Then, he saw Gu Xingyin pick one up and put it into his mouth with a calm expression. Shen Yan. He was stunned for a moment. Then, Gu Xingyin turned around and complained to him, "I don't like this. I want to eat mangosteen tomorrow." Shen Yan stared blankly at this familiar sister of his. In a trance, he felt as if a lifetime had passed. Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows. "Did you hear me?" Shen Yan came back to his senses and stood up, scaring Gu Xingyin. He quickly said, "Sister, you want to eat mangosteen? There's no need to wait until tomorrow. I'll buy it now." With that, he immediately left. Gu Xingyin's eyes were still fixed on the TV, but a smile appeared on her face. Silly. Shen Yan left the room. He leaned against the door and looked up at the sky. His eyes were red. When he heard his sister's words just now, he resisted the urge to cry. Everything was better than he had imagined. Shen Yan felt that since that summer 4 years ago, his life had been rewritten by a girl named Ling Su. He used to think that he had a lifetime to get her forgiveness. But now, he had a lifetime to love her and dote on her. Thus, on this morning, half a month before the new semester started, Gu Xingyin ate mangosteen, which she didn't particularly like, and gained a loyal dog boyfriend who was 187 meters tall. When Mrs. Chang came back with some daily necessities, she found that the two masters who had been in a cold war had reconciled. He really couldn't understand the world of young people. She was old. One day, Gu Xingyin specially invited Qin Chuan and Su Miaomiao out for a meal. Shen Yan didn't know her intentions at first. It wasn't until he saw the two of them flaunting their affection that he realized what she wanted him to see. Back at home, he hugged Gu Xingyin's waist tightly and rested his chin on her shoulder. "Sister, I'm sorry." Gu Xingyin patted his arm in disgust. "You used so much strength. My waist hurts." As soon as she finished speaking, she felt the strength around her waist loosen a lot, but the two of them were still tightly pressed against each other. To be honest, after such a long time, she no longer cared about that matter. Today, she just wanted him to be at ease and not think too much about it. The reason was that she realized that Shen Yan would become especially paranoid when it came to everything related to her. She didn't want to leave a knot in their hearts because of this. "You're the most important person to me, Shen Yan. You're also the person who will be with me forever and spend the rest of our lives together." She said this solemnly. Shen Yan didn't say anything. He just hugged her for a long time. It was so long that Gu Xingyin thought he had fallen asleep. Only then did she hear his voice softly ring in her ear. "Me too." Chapter 920. Without any surprise, he watched the little kingfisher's body disappear from his palm. Gu Xingyin calmly said to the system, "Begin the next world." The daughter of the Great Lai dynasty's right minister, Su Chaohua, when she was born, there was a vision from the heavens. The world saw the image of a phoenix descend on the right minister's residence and circle the residence 3 times. The emperor of the Great Lai dynasty thought this was the will of the heavens. He immediately sent down an imperial edict and set Su Chaohua as the official consort for the young crown prince Yunqi. Su Chaohua lived up to her name as the reincarnation of a phoenix. She was young and smart, and was familiar with poetry. When she grew up, she had a beauty that could topple cities. Su Chaohua was taught from a young age by the future mother of the nation. Her words and actions were a role model for women in the world. When she was 16, she married into the Eastern Palace and was deeply in love with the crown prince. When she was 26, she entered the Middle Palace. 10 years she was pampered, but had no children. She used to think that she was the happiest woman in the world. She had the most honorable status and a husband who was respected and loved by the emperor. Until the imperial edict came to her palace. Empress Su has had no children for many years. She could not be the empress and was demoted to a concubine and moved to the Serene Cloud Palace. End of the imperial edict. The Serene Cloud Palace had always been a place where no favored concubines lived. It did not have the name of a cold palace, but it was a cold palace in reality. Su Chaohua had never thought that the man would treat him so heartlessly. She rushed into Yun Qi's palace and saw a scene that made her face pale. The most honorable man in the world was carefully holding a bowl of soup and gently coaxing a woman, as if he wanted her to drink more. When the woman saw her come over, she did not know what she was thinking. She raised her hand and knocked the bowl in the emperor's hand to the ground. "How dare you?" Su Chaohua said this sentence out of habit. However, the woman did not pay attention to her. The emperor did not seem to care that his robe was dirty. His gaze swept over and he looked at her as if he was looking at a stranger. "Scram!" she heard him say to her. 16 years of childhood sweethearts, 10 years of love as husband and wife. Now, there was only an emotionless scram. Su Chaohua straightened her back, yes. Even if she was in a sorry state after losing, Su Chaohua's pride did not allow her to show it. That afternoon, she moved out of the central palace that symbolized the empress, and was rushed to Serene Cloud Palace in a few steps. And the next day, guests came to Serene Cloud Palace. Su Chaohua looked at the imperial concubine who had thrown a tantrum at the emperor the day before. She knew who she was. She was the daughter of the prime minister, Lu Shi. The two of them had entered the palace at about the same time, but one was the noble crown princess, and the other was an unfavored side consort. In these 10 years, Yun Qi had never shown any affection for Lu Shi. Everyone knew that His Highness the Crown Prince loved the Crown Princess, who was born with the fate of the Phoenix Emperor, the most. But now, what else did Su Chaohua not understand? Lu Shi looked at Su Chaohua as if she had seen something extremely disgusting. "Do you know, Su Chaohua, the person I hate the most in my life is you. Brother Yunqi and I are clearly childhood sweethearts who love each other, but you have the destiny of an empress. For 10 whole years, I watched you stand by his side for 10 whole years, while I could only be a lowly concubine, watching you and him enjoy the blessings of the world together from the corner. Every day, I think, Su Chaohua, why haven't you died yet?" Lu Shi looked at her coldly, her tone cold. This story was thanks to Ninth Demon's Darling for providing part of the imagination. Chapter 921. But I'm glad that you're not dead. Lu Shi suddenly changed her tone. Did you know? When the imperial edict was issued yesterday, my palace of Gongquan also received it. Lu Shi's expression was secretive and proud. The first imperial noble consort of the Great Lai dynasty. Brother Yunqi said that when my child is born, he will make me the empress. He won't let my child become a lowly concubine's son. Lu Shi caressed her lower abdomen, cherished it. For 10 years, she had not been pregnant because of this. Now, she finally had a child that belonged to her and brother Yunqi. When she heard the word child, Su Chaohua's expression finally changed. Child. Everyone knew that she had not had a child for 10 years, but no one knew that she had once been pregnant. But that child was too unlucky and did not come to this world peacefully. Lu Shi's expression suddenly became strange. Su Chaohua, you haven't had a child. Have you always been sad and guilty? Do you feel that you have let brother Yunqi down? You don't have to feel guilty at all because brother Yunqi doesn't want your child at all. Do you know that for your first child, it was brother Yunqi who personally ordered that a strange poison from the western regions be added to the medicine that he gave you to prevent miscarriage? Su Chaohua's calm expression suddenly cracked. She looked at Lu Shi in shock. This was the effect that Lu Shi wanted. Brother Yunqi doesn't like you. How could he let you, the Empress, give birth to a legitimate son? Su Chaohua, you have to remember that your glory these 10 years was just a smokescreen that Brother Yunqi used to protect me. From the beginning to the end, you were just a laughable failure. Oh right, I forgot to tell you one last thing. Lu Shi lowered her head and whispered in Su Chaohua's ear, who seemed to have lost all expression and anger. I asked Brother Yunqi to do all of this. I hate you, Su Chaohua. So I want to see you live a life worse than death. She looked at Su Chaohua happily as if she was a puppet that had lost all life. Her heart was incomparably carefree. But she did not see the cold light that flashed in Su Chaohua's eyes. In the next moment, a huge force fiercely hit her. She cried out and fell to the ground uncontrollably. An intense pain was transmitted from her lower body. Lu Shi was horrified to find that her light green skirt was stained with blood. Her visit to Su Chaohua this time was too secretive, so all the palace servants were standing guard outside. Who would have thought that he would dig a hole for himself? The last thing Lu Shi saw was the crazed Su Chaohua. She fainted at that moment. Therefore, she did not know that Su Chaohua had poured all the oil on the ground and ignited the entire serene cloud palace. By the time the palace servants outside realized that something was wrong, the fire in the main hall was already out of control. The deposed Madame Su had died in that accidental fire. At the same time, Lady Lu, who had just been promoted to imperial noble consort, was also surprised. Madame Lu was rescued, but her face and body were all burned. The fetus in her belly was miscarried, and her body was seriously damaged. It was impossible for her to conceive again in the future. Not to mention this, even if she could still get pregnant, with Madame Lu's current appearance, it was still uncertain whether she could be favored. Su Chaohua deliberately didn't take her life because he wanted to return it to her. Lu Shi wanted her to live a life worse than death. She returned her a life worse than death. Chapter 922. Gu Xingyin regained her senses and found at the top of her head was heavy. Her body was swaying as if she was sitting in a sedan. When she opened her eyes, she saw a sea of red in front of her. She reached out and lifted a corner of the red veil. Indeed, she was 16 years old and had just married Crown Prince Yunqi. At this time, Su Chaohua was still a person who held boundless expectations for the future and was both sweet and worried about his marriage. Everything had not started yet. No, it should be said that everything had just started. At this time, Lu Shi was still the left Prime Minister's residence's young miss. When the Crown Prince got married, he naturally could not take in a secondary consort at the same time. Doing so would not give the Yu family any face. Yunqi still needed the support of the right Prime Minister's faction, so of course he would not do such a stupid thing. Gu Xingyin put down her hand and sat there quietly. She actually admired Su Chaohua. He dared to love and hate. In the end, he did not let Lu Shi get a good ending. How well could a disfigured and childless consort live in a harem filled with beauties? How much sincerity could a person like Yunqi, who could act for 10 years and pass off the fake as the real thing? On the bustling street, there was a tea house whose second-floor window was slightly opened. A beautiful woman wearing a light yellow dress expressionlessly looked at the 10 miles of red makeup that made everyone click their tongues in wonder. Lu Shi's heart was bleeding with hatred. All of this should have been hers. It was all Su Chaohua's fault. That damned phoenix fate. As expected, the two of them were born to be at odds. Even their names were like this. Lu Shi, Su Chaohua, they were born to be enemies. However, when she thought of what Brother Yunqi said to her a few days ago, she felt relieved. So what if I'm the Crown Prince's consort? Brother Yunqi's heart only belongs to me. Soon, I will become the Crown Prince's secondary consort and rightfully accompany him by his side. In the Crown Prince's palace, Yun Qi's face was solemn, as if he did not have the slightest bit of joy from the wedding. The eunuch serving beside him felt strange. The Crown Prince and the Crown Princess had known each other since childhood and their relationship had always been good. Logically speaking, the Crown Prince should be very happy now. However, the Crown Prince might be too nervous. The eunuch's heart. Yun Qi's trying hard to keep a straight face and not let himself show any expression that he should not. But, no one would be able to calm down after waking up and finding themselves in a different place, a different body, or even a different world. Yun Qi's original name was also Yun Qi, but he was clearly from a grassroots background. He had relied on himself for more than 30 years and finally became a tall, rich, and handsome winner in life. His company had just been listed, and he had drunk too much at the company's celebration party last night, so he had fallen into a deep sleep. However, when he woke up, he found himself lying on a luxurious gold bed that was several times bigger than his own huge king-sized bed. Around him, there was a delicate and pretty boy who looked like he was still underage. The boy was calling him, "Your Highness Crown Prince." Yun Qi. I wonder if I can go back after sleeping for a while more. However, reality told him that he couldn't go back after sleeping. Before Yun Qi could get used to his new identity, he was informed that he was about to get married. This body was still alright, it was already 20 years old. However, his crown princess was said to be only 16 years old. Yun Qi was speechless. If you do something like this, you will be sentenced in our society. The expressionless great President Yun had a straight face as his eunuchs helped him change into his wedding clothes. Then, he expressionlessly waited for the arrival of his little bride. Ha ha ha, the biggest fantasy in this world was, the Crown Prince had transmigrated. This story was also called, Great President Yun's Transmigration. Chapter 923. According to the rules of the Great Lai dynasty, the Crown Prince was the heir to the throne, so he did not need to personally go to the bride's home like other bridegrooms. Yun Qi had enough time to wait in the Fu in a daze, to accept the truth. As a man who had received positive education in a socialist and harmonious society, Yun Qi admitted that although he wasn't a very kind person, he definitely hadn't done anything that offended the heavens and reason. Then why did he have to encounter this kind of transmigration? He could not understand. But at this time, it was not important whether he understood or not, because it had already become the truth. Fortunately, this body seemed to show respect to the Crown Prince consort and didn't set up a bed warmer before the wedding. Even the palace maids sent by the palace to teach others were sent away by the original Crown Prince with a reason. Yun Qi breathed a sigh of relief. Although he had begun to convince himself to accept the identity of Crown Prince Yun Qi, it did not mean that he could accept a large number of women with whom he had no feelings. This was fine. He did not know what kind of person the original Crown Prince was, would he be exposed? Just as he was thinking this, he suddenly felt dizzy. The sudden dizziness caused him to stagger and almost fall to the ground. Your Highness. The personal head eunuch Ing Fu was scared out of his wits. He hurriedly supported him and was about to call the imperial physician. Yun Qi hurriedly stopped him. I am fine, I just stood there for a long time and felt a little dizzy. Ing Fu was still a little worried, but Yun Qi glanced at him indifferently and Ing Fu immediately shut his mouth. Yun Qi was accepting the memories that originally belonged to Crown Prince Yun Qi in his mind. He did not know which of his words had turned on the switch, but suddenly the memories flooded him like a tide. Yun Qi picked up the teacup on the table and lightly took a sip to ease the complicated feelings in his heart. Just from these memories, this Yun Qi was really a bit of a scum. Originally, from the reactions of the people around him, Yun Qi was very fond of and looked forward to his wife. After all, the two had been engaged since young and could be called childhood sweethearts. But now he knew that Yun Qi did have a childhood sweetheart with deep feelings, but it was not his future wife. Instead, it was the daughter of the left Prime Minister, Lu Shi, who was also a young lady with a good reputation in the capital. The two of them had almost reached the stage of privately pledging their lives to each other. They had even agreed to wait until 3 months after the crown prince's wedding to take Lu Shi as his concubine. If Yun Qi really liked Lu Shi, he should not let her be his concubine. But the crown prince needed the right minister's faction to back him up, and he also needed Su Chaohua's prophecy. She was born with the fate of the phoenix, so Yun Qi did not dare to let her marry anyone else. Therefore, he had wronged his true love, Lu Shi. But to Yun Qi, the one who felt the most wronged was Su Chaohua, who was about to become the crown princess. Her husband liked another woman, and all the love and doting he had shown her in the past was all an act. She was just a 16-year-old girl, and she had no idea that the wedding she had been looking forward to was just a perfect lie. Inexplicably, Yinchi felt a faint sense of pity for his future wife. Your Highness the Crown Prince, Her Highness the Crown Prince Consort's wedding sedan has already arrived at the palace. An eunuch hurriedly came over to report. Chapter 924. Yun Qi glanced at Ing Fu. Ing Fu chuckled as he took out 2 silver ingots with a red thread tied to it from his sleeve and threw them to the young eunuch. His Highness bestowed this to you, to give you some luck. The little eunuch happily took it and retreated. Yun Qi, followed by a group of people, walked to the entrance of the palace. Gu Xingyin only felt the sedan shake slightly before it stabilized. She knew that she had arrived at the palace. Next, the groom led the bride out. Yun Qi reached out his hand, and someone beside him handed over a longbow that was already prepared. To be honest, Yun Qi was not good at archery, but fortunately, the original crown prince was not weak in this aspect, and this body's instincts were still there. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 3 arrows were shot at the sedan door, and a burst of applause came from beside him. The surroundings were filled with festive red, and countless people gathered around to look at him. In such an environment, Yun Qi actually felt a rare sense of nervousness. After all, he was someone who would not even blink when giving a speech in front of thousands of people. The curtain of the sedan was lifted by the bridesmaid, revealing a figure with a red veil on her head. Yun Qi exhaled, revealing a faint smile as he extended his hand to her. Gu Xingyin's heart was like this, oh, system, why is he the crown prince? System, analyzing data, Gu Xingyin, usually, the system would not be able to detect anything at this time, and Gu Xingyin was already used to this. She elegantly reached out her hand that had been hidden in her sleeve, and gently placed it on Yun Qi's hand. What a beautiful hand! Yun Qi could not help but sigh in his heart. Under the warm red light, this white hand was flawless, and the shape was perfect. It was even more beautiful than some of the hand models he had seen on TV. The slightly cold touch told Yun Qi that she was not as calm as she looked. If she was in the modern world, she would still be a high school student, but here she was about to get married. Yun Qi unconsciously pitied this little wife of his. He gently held Gu Xingyin's hand, and the two of them walked into the main hall together. What followed was a long and complicated ceremony. The crown prince's wedding was only slightly less complicated than the emperor's. She was busy from morning until dusk. Gu Xingyin finally had time to take a breather. Yun Qi was still receiving the blessings of his ministers and brothers outside. Fortunately, he was the crown prince and not many people dared to force him to drink. Otherwise, with so many guests, if each of them came, even 10 yinchi would not be enough. Gu Xingyin ate 2 glutinous rice balls with the help of her personal maidservant. Then she shook her head, indicating that she did not need any more. When Yun Qi walked to the door, he felt a little hot. He loosened his collar and paused for a moment before entering the room. He looked at the bride sitting quietly on the wedding bed and took a deep breath without batting an eyelid. Finally, he took the wedding certificate from the matron of honor and removed the veil on Gu Xingyin's head. The room was filled with light. Whether it was Yun Qi or the other women who stayed in the room to serve, all of them let out a gasp. This bride's appearance was really too dazzling. Before seeing his little bride, Yun-Chi had never thought that he was a good-looking person. With his status in the modern world, he had seen countless beauties. There were also many beauties who were willing to throw themselves at him because of his status. Yun-Chi had never had any different thoughts because of anyone's appearance. Until he saw her. Chapter 925. Even though he had seen Su Chaohua's appearance in Crown Prince Yun-Chi's memories, when Yun-Chi saw her in person, he still felt a kind of shock that directly struck his heart. Perhaps it was because Crown Prince Yun-Chi did not have a good impression of Su Chaohua, causing the Su Chaohua in his memories to lose some of her color. Only after seeing her in person could he feel her soul-stirring beauty. Yun-Chi held her hand and drank the wine from the wedding cup. After that, the outsiders in the wedding room all dispersed, leaving only the two newlyweds. Yun-Chi once again looked at his little wife under the burning red candles. Looking at a beauty under the candlelight, the more beautiful it was, the more intoxicating it was. He once again sighed with emotion. How did the original Crown Prince Yun-Chi manage to be so cold-hearted in front of such a great beauty? If it was him, facing such a delicate and timid little wife, he would definitely take care of her in the palm of his hand and not let her suffer the slightest bit of harm. Wait a minute. Yun-Chi was shocked by his own thoughts. It was clearly the first time the two of them met, why would he suddenly have such thoughts? He looked at Gu Xingyin again. That's right, it was like that. When he saw her, he wanted to take her under his wings and properly cherish her. Was he really a superficial person who looked at people's faces? Great Chairman Yun fell into deep thought. The two of them fell into a kind of mysterious and awkward atmosphere. In the end, it was Gu Xingyin who felt that if this continued, the two of them would sit facing each other until dawn. She lightly coughed and called out, "Your Highness the Crown Prince." Her voice was gentle and soft, causing Yun-Chi to tremble from head to toe. He subconsciously said, "Just call me Yun-Chi." After saying that, he realized that he was no longer the Yun-Chi of the past. As the Crown Prince of a country, saying such words, wasn't it a bit too ambiguous? Sure enough, when he turned his head, he saw his little wife slightly lower her head with a bashful expression. A beauty's rosy cheeks, for any man, was a silent temptation. After realizing what kind of reaction his body had, Yun-Chi inwardly scolded himself as a beast. How could he be in heat toward such a small girl? Then she heard her young wife say in a low voice, "Then Your Highness." "Yun-Chi, just call me Ruru. That's my nickname." Yun-Chi's ears went numb from her extremely shy tone. Then, Gu Xingyin saw that the people around her had no reaction. She was very sensitive to human auras. At this time, she could feel the nervousness of the people around her. A more vivid description would be, at this moment, all the muscles in Yun-Chi's body were in a tense state, and his heartbeat was unusually fast. This is not normal. Gu Xingyin, who knew the plot, understood that Crown Prince Yun-Chi did not have any romantic thoughts towards her. How could he be so nervous just because he was about to marry her? When she thought about how Crown Prince Yun-Chi had mysteriously become her lover, she had a bold guess. The current Crown Prince Yun-Chi was no longer the same Yun-Chi. Gu Xingyin's eyes lit up. It was actually very easy to find out. "Your Highness," she called out softly. "It's getting late, we should rest." After saying this, she shyly lowered her head. Gu Xingyin was waiting for Yun-Chi's reaction. No matter how slow Yun-Chi was, he still understood what she meant by rest. Although the other party was a little beauty that he had a good impression of, but, Yun-Chi expressed that he really could not get over this hurdle in his heart. Chapter 926. Yun-Chi tried his best to appear indifferent as he calmly looked at Gu Xingyin and said, "All right, then let's go to bed first." The two took off their outer clothes and used the warm water they had prepared beforehand to freshen up. Yunqi prepared to go to bed and sleep. That's right, he literally went to bed to sleep. Gu Xingyin. She was almost certain now that the current Crown Prince Yunqi was no longer the original Crown Prince Yunqi. That fellow would not do such an abnormal thing. Then it could be explained. She did not know what kind of person her lover was in this life, but he had coincidentally transmigrated into Crown Prince Yunqi's body and became her true husband. Gu Xingyin expressed that she was happy to see this bizarre development. However, on the wedding night, was it really okay to put his bride to the side and sleep alone? Before Yunqi could close his eyes, he heard a low sobbing sound. It was very obvious that the sound came from the girl beside him. The sobbing was low and enduring. He only felt that just hearing this sound made his heart ache. Yunqi opened his eyes and looked at Gu Xingyin. What's wrong? Gu Xingyin was sobbing softly. Hearing the question, she raised her head. Your Highness, do you dislike me? Dislike? How could that be? I clearly like you so much. Yunqi really wanted to say this. He did not understand why Gu Xingyin was crying until he realized his current identity. Yes, he was already Crown Prince Yunqi and she was his Crown Princess. On the wedding night, the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess did not sleep together. If this spread out, everyone would probably laugh at the Crown Princess for not being able to win the Crown Prince's heart. She would have to bear such a great humiliation. Yunqi felt a bit guilty. It was his fault for not thinking things through. He said with difficulty, I only see that you are still young. Too early. I'm afraid it's not good for your body. Gu Xingyin blinked her moist eyes, as if she had never heard of this before. She looked at him in confusion. At this moment, her long and curly eyelashes were still wet with tears. Her small nose was red and the way she looked at people with her moist eyes was simply tempting to commit a crime. Yunqi felt that his body, which had calmed down with great difficulty, began to stir again. However, his wife didn't realize it at all. She continued, there are imperial physicians checking my pulse regularly. Yesterday, the imperial physician even said that, it's okay. Towards the end of her sentence, her gaze was somewhat evasive, and her voice was somewhat unclear. But Yunqi heard it clearly. What she meant was that her body was already strong enough to withstand sexual intercourse. Seeing that he still had no reaction, Gu Xingyin boldly reached out her hand and gently tugged at the corner of his shirt. This time, even the gods and Buddhas could not hold it in any longer. Yunqi flipped over and pressed down on her body. Gu Xingyin seemed to be shocked. She stared at him with her big peach blossom eyes, and there was some nervousness in her eyes. No matter how dignified and calm she appeared, she was still only a 16-year-old child. However, she probably didn't know that with her appearance and her expression, she was an existence that could easily seduce people into committing crimes. Yunqi leaned forward and gently kissed Gu Xingyin's eyes. In the future, don't show this kind of expression in front of any man. He softly said in her ear. Gu Xingyin obediently nodded. Then, she hesitantly said in a small voice, I'll only show it to your Highness the Crown Prince. Yunqi's eyes darkened. She actually dared to seduce him. Chapter 927. They first went to the palace of the Emperor of Great Lai. The Emperor looked very energetic. He had always been very satisfied with Su Chaohua as his daughter-in-law and rewarded her with many good things. Then they went to visit the Empress Dowager. This time they went at the right time. The Empress happened to be in the Empress Dowager's palace. Gu Xingyin bowed respectfully and offered a cup of tea. Seeing Gu Xingyin get up, Yunqi quickly helped her. The Empress picked up the teacup and hid the smile in her eyes. They were indeed young couples. She began to feel sorry for them. Similarly, the Empress Dowager with a loving face and the Empress with a smiling face both took out valuable greeting gifts. They chatted for a while. Seeing that the Empress Dowager was tired, the two sensibly asked to leave. "Do you want to rest for a while?" Yun Qi saw that Gu Xingyin's face was not very good and asked considerately. He made a fuss late last night and she did not have a good rest. She had to wake up early in the morning to pay respects to the various palaces. Yun Qi felt distressed when he thought about it. Gu Xingyin did feel that her waist and back were sore at this moment, especially a certain indescribable place that was even more uncomfortable. She glanced around. This was the Imperial Garden. The environment was beautiful. There was a pavilion not far away. It was good to rest for a while here. Seeing her nod, Yun Qi directly held her hand and let her lean on his body for support. What was this like? Gu Xingyin wanted to break free. "Your Highness, this is not appropriate," Yun Qi raised his eyebrows. "You are my crown princess. No matter what I do with you, it is appropriate." He didn't lower his voice when he said this, so the palace servants serving behind him naturally heard it. They all covered their mouths and smiled. The crown prince and the crown princess were really close. Gu Xingyin blushed and no longer struggled. The two walked into the pavilion together. Soon, the palace servants served tea and exquisite snacks. Looking at the thoughtful service and the beautiful and gentle little wife beside him, Yun Qi suddenly felt that this time travel was not a bad thing. At the very least, he got a little wife that he really liked, didn't he? It was the turn of spring and summer. There were many rare flowers blooming in the Imperial Garden. When the breeze blew, there was a faint fragrance of flowers. Admiring the flowers in such an environment with her sweetheart was also a pleasant thing. Suddenly, a faint clamor came from not far away, disrupting the tranquility of this place. Yun Qi frowned, and Ning Fu, who was his personal attendant, hurried over. Which blind person couldn't see that His Highness the Crown Prince and Her Highness the Crown Prince Consort were here? Gu Xingyin, however, leisurely picked up the steaming hot tea. "Oh, this is top-notch tribute tea. The taste is indeed not bad." She knew that something would happen later. Sure enough, Ning Fu hurried over very quickly. He first glanced at Gu Xingyin cautiously before looking at his master. As the Crown Prince's trusted aide, Ning Fu more or less knew about the matter between his master and Miss Lu. It was precisely because he knew this that he did not rashly chase them away. Yun Qi glanced at him. "Just say what you want." This meant that there was no need to hide from the Crown Princess. Ning Fu raised the status of the Crown Princess in His Highness the Crown Prince's heart. Then he respectfully replied, "Your Highness, Miss Lu came to the palace to visit Her Highness the Empress Dowager. Hearing that His Highness and Her Highness the Crown Princess are here, she wants to pay her respects." Miss Lu. There was only one Miss Lu who could be summoned by the Empress Dowager. That was Crown Prince Yun Qi's childhood sweetheart, Lu Shi from the left Prime Minister's residence. First two updates. The other updates would probably be updated at night. Gao Lingji had to get up at 6 in the morning and would only come back at night. Good night, everyone. Chapter 928. Yun Qi's brows furrowed tightly. As for this Lu Shi, he was not too willing to see her. Putting the past aside, Yun Qi didn't want to judge the ambiguous entanglement between the original Crown Prince Yun Qi and her. But since he came to this body, some things had to be cut off. Now that he had his own Crown Princess, he had to make it clear to Lu Shi and let her let it go. Yun Qi glanced at Gu Xingyin and was about to say that he would go take a look. Then, he saw a light yellow figure gracefully walking towards him. Yun Qi's face immediately turned ugly. Those who were familiar with him should know that although Yun Qi was usually kind, he was a tolerant leader to his subordinates. But that was only in private. When it came to work, he was definitely a strict boss. And now, he was very unhappy. In his eyes, these guards were the Crown Prince's guards. Knowing that the Crown Prince and Crown Princess were enjoying the scenery and had ordered that no one was allowed to come near, these guards still let Lu Shi in. They were completely unqualified in terms of professionalism. While Yun Qi was angry, Lu Shi had already walked over. She was followed by 2 servant girls. There were no servant girls from the palace, so she must have come out of the Empress Dowager's palace. "This subject greets your highness the Crown Prince." She gracefully bowed to Yun Qi and looked at him with a pair of beautiful eyes that seemed to be able to speak. There seemed to be thousands of words hidden in them. She didn't seem to notice Gu Xingyin beside Yun Qi at all. Gu Xingyin slowly took a sip of tea again. Was this a blatant demonstration to her? When Lu Shi came in, she saw Yun Qi's ugly expression. She didn't know that Yun Qi was angry because of her. She thought that he was unhappy because of his marriage with Su Chaohua like her. She was happy and couldn't help but look at Gu Xingyin. With just one look, she was hurt by the red wedding dress that the other party was wearing. She was now brother Yun Qi's crown princess. Su Chaohua lowered her head and thought resentfully, so what if she was the crown princess? The person that brother Yun Qi liked was not her at all. As she was thinking about this, she didn't realize that Yun Qi hadn't asked her to get up. Until Yun Qi's cold voice came from above, according to the rules of the left Prime Minister's residence, is there a need to salute the Crown Princess? Lu Shi looked at Yun Qi in shock, as if she could not believe that he had just said such heartless words. However, she was met with Yun Qi's cold eyes. In that gaze, there was no trace of the warmth and gentleness she was familiar with. Lu Shi suddenly realized that something seemed to be different. Was it because of Su Chaohua? She subconsciously looked at Gu Xingyin, who had been sitting quietly by the side. Gu Xingyin sat calmly and looked at her with raised eyebrows. What's wrong? Does Miss Lu have a problem with this consort? I don't dare. Lu Shi lowered her head and bowed to Gu Xingyin. This time, Yun Qi finally relented and allowed her to stand up. Gu Xingyin looked at Lu Shi with a faint smile. Miss Lu, why did you come here in such a hurry? Of course, it was to see brother Yun Qi. Lu Shi didn't dare to say this. She could only look at Yun Qi for help, hoping that he could say something for her. Chapter 929. However, Yun Qi only looked at Gu Xingyin with tenderness in his eyes and did not notice her gaze at all. Lu Shi bit her lip and finally curtsied to Gu Xingyin, saying, this subject was summoned by the Empress Dowager. I was passing by the Imperial Garden and heard that His Highness the Crown Prince and Her Highness the Crown Prince Consort were enjoying the scenery here, so I came to pay my respects. She felt that by saying this, she was already admitting defeat. But Gu Xingyin did not intend to let it go so easily. If she really let Lu Shi pass so easily, where would Yun Qi's prestige as the Crown Prince be? Where would her face as the Crown Prince Consort be? Gu Xingyin gently put the teacup in her hand on the table. The teacup and the marble table made a crisp sound. This sound passed through the air and seemed to reach Lu Shi's heart. Her heart suddenly started beating very fast. Gu Xingyin put away the smile on her face. This consort and His Highness the Crown Prince are enjoying the scenery here and are strictly not to be disturbed by unrelated people. Did Miss Lu not hear anyone mention this? She changed the topic. If Miss Lu has not heard anyone mention this, then this consort wants to see which daring servant dares to not care about the Eastern Palace's decree. Lu Shi's face turned red and white. Gu Xingyin's words seemed to be scolding the guards, but in reality, she was talking about her. She was just short of pointing at her nose and saying that she did not know the rules. Ing Fu, who was acting like a wooden stake, carefully looked at Yun Qi's expression. Seeing that he did not have the slightest intention of standing up for Lu Shi, he had a clearer understanding of the importance of these two in his master's heart. At this time, he stood up and said slowly, replying to the Crown Prince Consort, this servant reminded Miss Lu that you and His Highness were enjoying the scenery here and were not allowed to barge in. But Miss Lu insisted on coming in. Miss Lu has a noble status, so the guards did not dare to do anything. Noble status? It was noble in the past His Highness the Crown Prince's heart. Gu Xingyin glanced at Yun Qi with a calm expression. How does His Highness the Crown Prince feel that this should be handled? Yun Qi looked at her dotingly. You can decide for yourself on this kind of thing. Lu Shi's eyes were deeply hurt by the gentle smile on his face. In the past, this smile had always been directed at her. He had even said that he would soon accept her into the Eastern Palace. Why is everything so different now? Could it be because they were getting married? Gu Xingyin didn't care what Lu Shi thought. She was very satisfied with Yun Qi's attitude. She said slowly, if that's the case, then Miss Lu should go home and learn the rules. First, copy Principles for Women 10 times. If you still don't understand the rules, I'll have to take some extreme measures. She actually dared to punish him. Lu Shi suddenly raised her head. It was not difficult to repeat the Principles for Women 10 times, but the key was the punishment from the palace. If she was really punished by the Crown Prince Consort to copy the Principles for Women, her reputation would be ruined. Everyone would know that the young miss of the left Prime Minister's manor did not follow the rules. In this way, she would definitely become the laughingstock of the noble ladies' circle. Lu Shi raised her voice. Your Highness the Crown Prince, Her Highness the Empress Dowager specially asked someone to bring me into the palace, Gu Xingyin interrupted her. In that case, Miss Lu, to show your filial piety, why don't you copy it as well? Also, copy the Diamond Sutra 10 times. She wanted to use Her Highness the Empress Dowager to suppress her. Gu Xingyin expressed that she was not afraid of this. 4 chapters. Gigi's eyes were very red and swollen because of a minor operation today. It was very painful and she could not open her eyes. I will try my best to write more chapters today. If I can't take it anymore, I will make up for the chapters that are less than 8 chapters in 2 or 3 days. Chapter 930. She hardened her tone, Miss Lu, be careful with your words. Lu Shi was shocked, and then she heard Gu Xingyin's voice coming over unhurriedly, the Empress Dowager brought you into the palace with good intentions. Why did Miss Lu make a mistake and want to implicate the Empress Dowager? Lu Shi glared at Gu Xingyin. She clearly didn't mean that. Why did it have a completely different meaning in Su Chaohua's mouth? She just wanted to use the Empress Dowager to make Su Chaohua afraid and not punish her easily. Sure enough, Su Chaohua, this woman, not only was she scheming, she was also very eloquent. The more Lu Shi thought about it, the more she felt wronged. That's right. There was also Brother Yunqi. He would definitely be able to see Su Chaohua's true colors. Thinking of this, Lu Shi looked at Yunqi expectantly with a pitiful look. Yunqi didn't like girls with this kind of character. In the society he lived in, women were not worse than men. He even had many strong female business competitors. Therefore, Yunqi had always admired those kind of generous, confident, and capable women. Yunqi felt that he couldn't appreciate this kind of soft and weak girl who seemed like she would be blown away by the wind. His little wife was still the best. Yunqi smiled as he watched his little wife suppressing people until they were speechless without any change in expression. He was extremely proud in his heart. This was his little wife. Seeing that Yunqi was indifferent to her, Lu Shi's eyes finally turned red and tears fell. She couldn't help but call out, Brother Yunqi, Yingfu. Why did he have to stand so close to her? Would he be silenced if he knew too much? Yunqi. Was this Lu Shi stupid? Gu Xingyin. He. Lu Shi only called out to Yunqi affectionately and stopped talking. Clearly, she was waiting for him to express something. Lu Shi originally didn't want to be like this. She had already agreed with Crown Prince Yunqi that their relationship would always be hidden. Even if she entered the residence in the future, she wouldn't be too favored. All of this was to protect her. Although she was a little unwilling at that time, she felt very sweet because the person she liked was also thinking for her. But today, she didn't know why, seeing Gu Xingyin and Yunqi's affectionate appearance, her heart seemed to feel empty. Her intuition told her that if she didn't fight for it, she might never get what she wanted. So, she called out to brother Yunqi. Yunqi, however, looked at Gu Xingyin very awkwardly. In his heart, he originally intended to keep this matter a secret from Gu Xingyin forever. After all, this was not something he had caused. He still planned to find a time to meet Lu Shi in private and explain that everyone would go their separate ways from this bridge. He already had a concubine, he should find a suitable. Who knew that before he could start all his preparations, Lu Shi would reveal it herself. Such an intimate address, such an intimate way. Even Yunqi himself wouldn't believe that there was nothing fishy between the two of them. Gu Xingyin, who should have been the most shocked, was the calmest among the three of them at this moment. She stood up and said, "It seems that your highness has some private matters to deal with. I'll take my leave first." She finished speaking and was about to leave. Yunqi subconsciously grabbed her hand and said, "Don't go." Gu Xingyin struggled slightly and said, "Your highness, it's not that I'm pretentious, but at this moment, I'm not in a position to stand here. There are only 5 chapters today. Gigi will make up for the 3 chapters later. Also, thank you for your concern." Gigi read the comments. Ahem. Ni Meng might have misunderstood. I'm not sick. I did it myself. I just wanted to look better, but it hurts. I regret it so much. Chapter 931. Judging from his appearance, he was clearly angry. Yunqi was not a hothead. He knew that he would be a fool if he really let his wife leave at this time. He looked at Gu Xingyin and said seriously, "The one who should leave is not you. If it was not her, then it would be someone else." Lu Shi's face instantly turned pale. Yunqi's words were equivalent to making a choice between the two of them. And she was the one who was abandoned. Lu Shi's eyes reddened and finally, she could not hold back her tears. Her sweet memories and dreams of glory and wealth seemed to have all turned into bubbles at this moment. No, it shouldn't be like this. Clearly, everything was not like this a few days ago. Gu Xingyin did not seem to care much about the dispute between the two of them. She did not even look at Lu Shi, as if she did not care about this woman at all. Instead, she looked at Yunqi. "Your Highness, this is your Highness' private matter. It is better for your Highness to solve it yourself." But she put her hands in her sleeves and her wide sleeves fluttered in the wind, looking unspeakably grand and noble. "No matter what, it is better to solve this matter as soon as possible. Otherwise, if this matter is spread out, I am afraid that it will not be good for your Highness' reputation." Yunqi was speechless. He did not hold on to Gu Xingyin anymore and only silently watched her figure walk further and further away. "Your Highness, how can you leave?" Only after she walked far away did Gu Xingyin's personal palace maid, Kai He, worriedly ask Gu Xingyin. At this time, how could the crown princess create a chance for His Highness and Miss Lu to be alone? Gu Xingyin glanced at her and smiled faintly. "Go and tell the kitchen that I want to eat lighter tonight." Kai He saw that she did not care at all and became even more anxious. But her master's matters were not something she could manage. She sighed and bowed to Gu Xingyin before retreating. Gu Xingyin casually strolled around the garden alone. Of course, she knew what Kai He was worried about. She was afraid that something would happen between the two of them. However, if the two of them really needed her to watch over them at all times to prevent certain things from happening, then what was the point of being a married couple? Moreover, she had enough confidence in her man. Her choice to leave was just to give Yunqi a chance to solve the mess left behind by the original owner. She didn't want to have to clean up the mess that Yunqi left behind in the past. The scene returned to the pavilion. Ing Fu had already seen the opportunity and walked not far away. He maintained a distance where he could react in time but couldn't hear the contents of his master's conversation clearly. At this moment, there were only two people left. Without any outsiders, Lu Shi's expression changed. Other than her previous pitiful appearance, her eyes were filled with deep affection. "Big brother Yunqi." She called out with sincerity. Yunqi frowned. "Miss Lu, please pay attention to your etiquette. My name is not something that anyone can say." Lu Shi looked at him with a pale face. "Yunqi. Your Highness the Crown Prince, have you forgotten the oath between us?" Yunqi felt a headache coming on. But he had taken over Crown Prince Yunqi's body, so he had to solve the problems he left behind, whether it was good or bad. But for him to lose his temper at a girl, he couldn't do such a thing. Moreover, with Lu Shi like this, the former Crown Prince Yunqi was not innocent. He thought about his words and said as tactfully as possible. "Miss Lu, you should forget about the past." Chapter 932. Yunqi thought that he had already said it quite straightforwardly. "Now that I am married, Ro Chaohua is a good wife. I will respect and love her well in the future. I was young and frivolous in the past. I have let you down." Yunqi hesitated for a moment, but still took the blame for the former Crown Prince Yunqi. He said seriously to Lu Shi, "You are also a noble young lady. You should find a husband who will dote on you, love you, and protect you." He said this from the bottom of his heart. To Yunqi, he really could not understand those girls who were rushing to be concubines. Dali emphasized the difference between the legitimate wife and the concubine. The status of a concubine was only slightly higher than that of a servant. Even if she married into the royal family and had a status, so what if she had a noble status? If she was not the legal wife, no matter how dignified she was, in the eyes of the real aristocrats, she was still just a concubine. Lu Shi widened her eyes and looked at Yunqi, as if trying hard to find a trace of him joking on his face. But there was none. The other party's expression was very serious, and there was no trace of him faking it. He really wanted to distance himself from her. Lu Shi finally cried out. This time, it was different from her previous pitiful appearance. It was a completely broken cry. "No, it's not like that. Brother Yunqi, you obviously like me so much. You even said that you would marry me as a concubine. You don't love that bitch Su Chaohua. You said that you were just acting with her and that you would destroy her in the future." "I don't believe it." Yunqi's face was gloomy. When he saw Lu Shi like this, he felt some pity in his heart. It seemed that this Miss Lu was indeed sincere to Yunqi. But when he heard the latter part, the pity in his heart was completely replaced by anger. Who gave this woman the guts to make up stories about his Ruru? That's right. President Yun had a bad habit, and that was to protect his own. Anyone who was acknowledged by him would be taken under his wings. Not to mention his own wife. In Yunqi's heart, his little wife was absolutely good in every way. He could not tolerate anyone saying anything wrong. This Lu Shi kept calling her a bitch. She was simply challenging his bottom line. Yunqi immediately said without any trace of politeness, "Miss Lu, offending the royal family is a serious crime." This time, I took it as Miss Lu's mind was in a mess and spoke without thinking. I don't want to hear such words a second time. Otherwise, the consequences are definitely not what Miss Lu wants to see. He felt that he had already said what he needed to say, so he stood up with a flick of his sleeve. "Oh right, Miss Lu, don't forget the words that the Crown Prince consort left behind." Ing Fu didn't know what happened between the two of them in the pavilion. He only saw that the two of them kept a safe distance from each other and didn't have any intimate behavior. He already had a guess in his heart. At this moment, he saw his master walking out while Miss Lu seemed to be crying alone in the pavilion. Was he done? Furthermore, from the looks of it, he was rather unhappy. Ing Fu was shocked. As Yun Qi's confidant, he already knew the position of Miss Lu in the Crown Prince's heart. It could be said that if it wasn't for the prophecy about the fate of the phoenix on the Crown Prince Consort, the Crown Prince Consort would have been someone else. However, the Crown Prince Consort hadn't even married into the Eastern Palace for a day before His Highness the Crown Prince cut off all contact with Miss Lu. This method was truly admirable. Chapter 933. As the Crown Princess, there were some things that Gu Xingyin didn't need to be instructed. Someone would report it to her. For example, the Crown Prince and Miss Lu of the left Prime Minister's mansion didn't talk for long in the pavilion. The Crown Prince seemed to leave unhappily, and Miss Lu sat alone in the pavilion for a long time. In fact, she didn't sit for a long time, but cried for a long time. Gu Xingyin was very satisfied. What happened in the Imperial Garden didn't escape the ears of those in power in the Imperial Palace. When the Emperor heard the report, he seemed very happy. The Crown Prince is quite decisive this time. In my opinion, after the wedding, he should live a good life with the Crown Princess and let me hold the little Imperial grandson as soon as possible. Although the previous Crown Prince Yunqi and Lu Shi thought that they did it secretly, what in the world could be hidden from the most powerful people in the world? The Emperor didn't interfere because this matter was just a trivial matter to him. As long as the Crown Prince could handle it well, he wouldn't interfere. But now he was very satisfied with the result of the Crown Prince's handling. After all, Su Chaohua was the Crown Princess he had personally appointed since birth. After so many years of attention, he had developed a lot of feelings for this daughter-in-law. Naturally, he still hoped that the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess could be together and the harem would be stable. Only then could the man have enough energy to manage his own affairs. Just like himself, he had a good empress and never needed to worry about the harem. When the empress heard the report, she was full of smiles. The Crown Prince was her only child. Since Su Chaohua was the Crown Princess from a young age, she often brought her to the Imperial Palace to play. She didn't have a daughter and had long regarded this future daughter-in-law as half a daughter. Naturally, she didn't want to see her wronged. Moreover, as the Empress, no matter how generous she was still the legal wife and naturally disliked those concubines. Seeing that someone jumped out to make trouble just after the Crown Prince's wedding, the Empress was displeased with Miss Lu of the left Prime Minister's mansion. Mu Jin, take out my pair of Eastern pearl head ornaments and send it to the Crown Princess in the Eastern Palace. Such a dazzling thing is perfect for the bride. She ordered her chief palace maid. Eastern pearl head noodles. Mu Jin was shocked. The Eastern Pearl was a tribute from a small country in the south a few years ago. It was the only one of its kind. It just so happened that it was not far from the Empress's Thousand Autumns festival, so the Emperor ordered the manufacturing department to specially create such a unique head ornament for the Empress. At that time, all the concubines behind her were envious. Her Majesty the Empress is purposely giving face to the Crown Princess. Mu Jin lowered her head and agreed. However, the atmosphere in the Empress Dowager's palace was not so good. The Empress Dowager was from the Lu family. In terms of seniority, she was the aunt of the left Prime Minister and Lu Shi's great-aunt. As the most outstanding girl in this generation of the Lu family, the Empress Dowager had spent a lot of effort on her. All these years, the Empress Dowager would occasionally invite Lu Shi into the palace to accompany her in the name of missing the younger generation. She was more or less trying to cultivate a relationship with the Crown Prince. He was already old and couldn't protect the Lu family for long. The Emperor was not his biological son, so he would not have much affection for the Lu family. And the crown prince was the future monarch. If the future monarch's heart was with the Lu family, it would naturally be best. However, with the crown prince consort Su Chaohua around, no matter what, Lu Shi was naturally a head shorter than her. Chapter 934. The Empress Dowager had heard Lu Shi say that she had a special relationship with the crown prince. This made the Empress Dowager very happy. As for whether the Lu family's legitimate daughter was the Empress Dowager, the Empress Dowager herself was not the Empress Dowager. She was promoted to the Empress after the death of the late Empress Yuan. She did not care much about this. As long as the Emperor's concubines could capture the Emperor's heart, anyone could ascend to the supreme position, wasn't it? She had spent too much effort on this grandniece. Unfortunately, what happened in the Imperial Garden today clearly told everyone that this miss of the left Prime Minister's residence did not have much status in the Crown Prince's heart. Everyone saw the Crown Prince personally supporting the Crown Princess and had a deep friendship with the newly married Crown Princess. Moreover, the Crown Princess was deeply loved by the Emperor and the Empress. No one could shake her status. As for Miss Lu, no one in the palace was not a smart person. Since the Crown Prince did not want to have anything to do with her, then she had nothing to do with the Crown Prince. It was said that the Empress Dowager's show and palace had a new tea set that day. Gu Xingyin had just returned to the East Palace when she heard that the Crown Prince had returned and had been waiting for her. Gu Xingyin entered his bedroom and saw Yun Qi sitting upright on a chair. His expression was calm and one could not tell if he was happy or angry. As soon as she entered, she waved her hand and the palace servants who were serving her tactfully retreated. The door was silently closed. As soon as the palace servants left, Yun Qi's pretense of being aloof instantly disappeared. He quickly stood up and opened his arms to embrace Gu Xingyin, who was about to bow to him. "I'm sorry." Holding his little wife, his nose was filled with the unique fragrance of her hair. Yun Qi whispered these words. Gu Xingyin's heart softened. This matter actually had nothing to do with the current Yun Qi, but he apologized to her because of this. "Your Highness." Gu Xingyin wanted to say that she did not mind, but suddenly stopped. No wife would not mind this kind of thing. Su Chaohua did not know that this was not the real Yun Qi. In the end, she only raised her hand and gently patted Yun Qi's hand. Yun Qi maintained the same word count and said, "Ruru, listen to me." He sat here and thought for a long time, and finally decided to tell her everything. The matter between Yun Qi and Lu Shi had really happened. Instead of letting others use this as a tool to drive a wedge between husband and wife, it was better for him, the person involved, to explain it clearly. In the past, Crown Prince Yun Qi and Lu Shi were only at the initial stage of understanding and did not do anything excessive. Yun Qi slowly talked about Crown Prince Yun Qi and Lu Shi. After all, he had been a leader for many years and was well versed in the art of language. The originally sentimental love story, under his narration, turned into a slightly ambiguous love story between a young man. However, he really wasn't lying. Gu Xingyin, if I didn't know the original plot, I would have thought that Crown Prince Yun Qi and Lu Shi were purely admiring each other. However, she was already very satisfied. This man was willing to tell her everything, which was already the greatest sincerity and frankness. The two kept hugging each other like this until Yun Qi saw Gu Xingyin's tired face. He was secretly annoyed at his carelessness and sat down with Gu Xingyin. He did not let go of her, so in this way, Gu Xingyin was hugged by him and directly sat on his lap. Chapter 935. From the perspective of a modern person, this posture was nothing special for a couple who had a good relationship, let alone a legal couple. But this was a conservative and feudal ancient time. Yun Qi's action could be said to be quite bold and unrestrained. Gu Xingyin blushed very cooperatively and struggled to get up and leave. However, Yun Qi's hand was like iron around her waist, and she couldn't break free at all. Yun Qi chuckled and looked at his little wife's pink and shy appearance, only thinking that she was very cute. He couldn't help but tighten his arms a little, and felt satisfied to feel that their bodies were tightly pressed together. "Sorry, I forgot that you weren't feeling well and made you stand for so long." As soon as these words reached Gu Xingyin's ears, it successfully caused another wave of blush. This man knew best why she was feeling unwell. Realizing that if he continued to tease, his little wife in his arms would smoke, Yun Qi finally straightened his expression. "Ruru, I said so much to you just now because I wanted to tell you." Yun Qi gently lifted Gu Xingyin's lowered head with his hand, making her look at him. "I am your husband, you are my wife. We are one, and we will be together forever, all the way until the end of our lives. I won't hide anything from you, and I also hope that if you have any dissatisfaction or doubts in your heart, you can tell me directly. I will tell you everything. I like you, Ruru." This confession was simply unexpected. Even if Gu Xingyin was an experienced driver who had experienced many worlds, she had to admit that at this moment, she was suddenly captivated by Yun Qi's sincere confession. After saying these words, Yun Qi waited for his wife's response. For him, whether he was the president of his previous life or the crown prince of this body, it was the first time that he said such words of love to someone else. He was still a little nervous. However, after waiting for a while, he only saw his little wife staring at him blankly, and her eyes were a little red. Was she so moved that she became silly? Yun Qi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. At the same time, he felt that his wife in this state was too delicious. He couldn't help but feel restless in his heart. With the advantage of this natural posture, Yun Qi lowered his head and accurately kissed Gu Xingyin's sweet red lips. The palace guards outside only knew that His Highness the Crown Prince and Her Highness the Crown Prince Consort had stayed in the bedroom for a long time. When the Crown Princess came out, her eyes were red, her cheeks were red, and even her lips were red. On the other hand, His Highness the Crown Prince, who was standing at the side, looked pleased with himself. He even thoughtfully supported the Crown Princess's body. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell at a glance that something had happened between the newlyweds. The palace servants all pursed their lips and smiled. Gu Xingyin got angry when she saw Yun Qi like this. Just now in the palace, he actually let her, thinking of something that couldn't be said, she raised her head and fiercely glared at Yun Qi. Her eyes were the standard peach blossom eyes. Usually, they looked especially watery and seductive. At this moment, there was still the lingering charm of lust in the corners of her eyes. They were big and bright and charming. After being glared at like this, the heat in Yun Qi's body that had calmed down with great difficulty almost surged up again. Really, he facepalmed. This time, he had really fallen for her. Chapter 936. The Crown Princess and the Crown Prince's days were very sweet. Even the consorts and concubines in the palace looked like they were blinded every time they mentioned this young couple. How to put it, it was really, here were a few examples. One day, the Crown Prince consort and a concubine met by chance in the imperial garden and admired the scenery together. After chatting for a while, the Crown Prince's trusted chief steward, Eunuch Ingfu, came over. When he saw the Crown Prince consort, he sighed in relief. His Highness said that you usually take 2 cups of tea's time for a walk at this time every day. He was a bit worried that you haven't returned to the palace today, so he had this servant come over to take a look. Gu Xingyin smiled at the concubine in embarrassment, but the sweetness in her smile couldn't be concealed. The concubine who was inexplicably stuffed with dog food, she could only show an understanding smile and said with sincere envy, His Highness the Crown Prince and Her Highness the Crown Prince Consort have such a good relationship. Then Gu Xingyin excused herself and followed Ingfu back to the Eastern Palace. The concubine was left behind to look at the beautiful flowers in the garden and instantly felt that everything had lost its color. One day, the crown prince consort was talking with the empress in her palace. 2 hours later, the crown prince rushed over and paid his respects to the empress. The empress was in a good mood when she saw the young couple flirting in front of her. She couldn't help but tease, "I had Chaohua chat with this old woman. Are you afraid that I will eat you?" Yinchi widened his eyes and said solemnly, "How can that be? I just missed Imperial Mother and came to visit you." Then he quietly whispered in Gu Xingyin's ear, "I have already ordered the kitchen to make the pot you mentioned last time. Later, I will tell Imperial Mother that we won't be eating here and will go back to eat." But his voice was neither loud nor soft, just enough for the Empress to hear. The Empress. Seeing them like this, she suddenly remembered the time when she and the Emperor had just gotten married. As a young couple, the two of them had once had intimate days. The Empress scolded jokingly, okay, I know what you mean. Chaohua, hurry and go back with this guy so that you don't annoy me here." One day, the crown prince consort was suddenly invited to the palace by the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager smiled kindly, completely like a tolerant and kind elder. For the entire time it took to drink a cup of tea, they were praising Gu Xingyin for being virtuous, kind, and virtuous, as well as being in harmony with the crown prince. After he finished speaking, the topic suddenly changed to Gu Xingyin's stomach. He said that people who were old wanted to see the birth of a new life in the royal family. Gu Xingyin maintained her perfect smile the whole time, or lowered her head shyly, but she didn't say anything. The Empress Dowager also said that the Eastern Palace seemed to be a little too quiet. She wanted to send a few people over to serve them. Gu Xingyin was about to find a reason to refuse when Yun Qi appeared in the palace. "Thank you for your concern, Imperial Grandmother." Yun Qi smiled sincerely, but his words made the Empress Dowager choke. "I also feel that the Eastern Palace is a little too quiet. I'm trying my best to give you a grandson." He emphasized the word direct, as if he was reminding him of something. The Empress Dowager's expression changed slightly. She just smiled and changed the topic, no longer mentioning the matter of adding another person. And so on. 3 months after the wedding in the Eastern Palace, everyone in the palace knew that the relationship between the Crown Prince and the Crown Prince consort was really good. Many women from noble families often entered the palace. Naturally, this news had also spread outside the palace. Some people were gratified by this, but there were also people who crumpled their handkerchiefs when they heard the news. Chapter 937. Lu Shi was the one who crumpled the handkerchief. Yun Qi's words that day were too heartless, and coupled with the punishment the crown princess gave her, she stayed in the left prime minister's residence for 3 whole months. However, this didn't mean that she gave up. Lu Shi didn't want to believe that Yun Qi would have a change of heart in such a short time. She felt that Yun Qi must need the crown princess's help now, so he had to pretend that he was deeply in love with the crown princess and cut off all ties with her. Regardless of whether this was true or not, Lu Shi believed that this was the truth. She didn't want to accept that Yun Qi fell in love with the crown princess, Su Chaohua. She also didn't want to accept that Yun Qi didn't like her for no reason. In Lu Shi's heart, she always felt that she would be the crown prince's woman, and because of her relationship with the crown prince, she would become the most noble woman in the world sooner or later. Therefore, she didn't want to accept any accidents. Even if the crown prince really had deep feelings for the crown princess, she didn't want to give up. Since she could make the crown prince like her once, then she was confident that she could make the crown prince like her a second time. In 2 days, it would be the empress's birthday. As the legitimate daughter of the left prime minister's residence and the Empress Dowager's legitimate grandniece, Lu Shi naturally had the right to attend. Not only did she want to go, but she also wanted to dress up beautifully so that everyone would be shocked. She wanted to regain Brother Yun Qi's heart. "Your Highness, what do you think of this gown?" Saiha took out a silver-red luxurious robe and showed it to Gu Xingyin. The Empress's birthday naturally couldn't be underestimated. Her Highness was a newlywed, so most of the robes she wore were of a more festive color. Gu Xingyin shook her head. I remember that the manufacturing company sent a purple robe over a few days ago. I'll take that one. Saiha recalled that the purple robe happened to be a very popular style recently. Both the color and style were grand and noble, suitable for more grand occasions. She nodded. At this time, Yun Qi came in. Seeing the robe in Saiha's hands, he knew what was going on. He said with a smile, picking out tomorrow's clothes. Kai, he replied, replying to Your Highness, Her Highness has taken a liking to that heavy purple robe. She said this because the Crown Prince was also present when the manufacturing company sent it over a few days ago. Furthermore, he personally praised the robe for its beauty. Sure enough, Yun Qi's eyes lit up and he nodded. That's right. Seeing that His Highness the Crown Prince and Her Highness the Crown Prince Consort seemed to have something to say, Kai he sensibly retreated. What's the matter? Gu Xingyin turned her head and asked Yun Qi. She just sat there lazily and didn't get up to bow. The two of them had been together for the past 3 months, and they had become more and more casual. Yun Qi, on the other hand, was quite happy to see such a change. In other words, this was the effect he wanted. Gu Xingyin's behavior made him feel that his little wife was slowly treating him as her husband instead of the Crown Prince. He pulled Gu Xingyin into his arms and sighed in satisfaction. It's nothing. I just missed you. He had a few small habits. First, he wasn't used to having an extra third wheel waiting on him when he was alone with Gu Xingyin. Second, he especially liked to have physical contact with his wife, especially hugging. He felt that hugging his little wife felt very good. It was like hugging his entire world. Chapter 938. You. Gu Xingyin suddenly thought of something. She was about to say something when she suddenly stopped. Clearly, she was hesitant about what she was about to say. Yun Qi gently kissed her hair and asked gently, "What's wrong?" Gu Xingyin thought of what he said before. They had to be honest with each other about everything. She still asked, "We have been married for so long, but there has been no news. Do you feel pressured?" Yun Qi took a while to realize what Gu Xingyin meant by news. Children. However, this silly girl didn't know that a large part of the reason why she wasn't pregnant was because of him. Even though Yun Qi didn't know much about this, he knew that giving birth was a big deal for a woman. Especially in this ancient era where medical technology was relatively backward, it was equivalent to taking a trip to the gates of hell. She was only 16 years old. Young girls would be in more danger during childbirth. He even secretly consulted the imperial physician about this. The imperial physician thought that the crown prince was in a hurry to have an heir and told him all the things he should pay attention to. This included some foods that were best avoided because eating those foods would affect fertility. Yun Qi secretly had the small kitchen in the Eastern Palace make some dishes. The small kitchen in the Eastern Palace and the recipes of the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess were absolutely confidential. Naturally, they couldn't be leaked. Therefore, no one thought that the Crown Prince was using his own method to prevent the Crown Princess from giving birth to an heir too early. Yun Qi's first reaction when he heard this was, did someone use this to make Ruru feel wronged? His expression turned cold as he asked, did someone gossip in front of you? Gu Xingyin shook her head. No, it's just my own guess. Yun Qi relaxed and hugged her tighter. He said with a smile, it's nothing. How long has it been since we got married? No one would be stupid enough to talk about this. He was afraid that Gu Xingyin would think too much, so he continued, don't worry. On the contrary, I think it's good that we are like this now. With a child, you won't have any extra energy to accompany me. When he said this, he was like an ordinary husband hugging his wife and acting coquettishly. Where was the dignity of a crown prince of a country? Gu Xingyin's heart was filled with infinite sweetness by these undisguised words of love. Yun Qi continued, also, I heard from the imperial physician that having a child too early is not good for the body. I'm not in a hurry either. Let's take it slow. Murmurs could be faintly heard from the bedchamber. Occasionally, the crown prince consort's happy laughter could be heard. Obviously, the two masters were chatting happily. He raised her head to look at the sky. Yes, there were no clouds in the sky. It was a beautiful day. The Empress's Thousand Autumns Festival had arrived amidst the meticulous preparations of the manufacturing department. As her daughter-in-law, Gu Xingyin naturally came to the palace early. Chao Hua is here. The Empress was dressed splendidly today. She was wearing a luxurious golden robe embroidered with phoenixes, and the nine-tailed pearl phoenix hairpin on her head was shining brightly. The Empress today was so beautiful that no one dared to look at her directly. It's Mohu's Thousand Autumns Festival. Ken naturally has to be the first person to congratulate Mohu. Gu Xingyin smiled mischievously. Finishing, she looked at the Empress and said in a plaintive voice, Ken specially dressed up for today, but standing in front of Mohu, who can see Urchin's figure. The Empress couldn't help but laugh at this compliment. Finishing, Gu Xingyin solemnly bowed to the Empress. Ken wishes Mohu's magnificence to last forever. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.